6 o'clock.
Thank you, bye. Go.
All right, on Center City Council Joint Regular Committee meeting Thursday, May 29th, 2019.
May 9th.
I'm looking at all the dates. 2019, 6 o'clock, members present, Mark McKeever, myself, Kevin Myers, Dan Wireball, Bruce Truca, Doug Vogt, Andrew Shaw. Okay, calling the meeting to order by myself at 6 p.m. Any public participation? Okay. We'll move right on. Number 3, referral ODOT paving of Quaker Road, State Route 19 to Platting.
Okay, this is a piece of legislation that we want to do. It's another ODOT project where we own, the city property adjoins a small section of it. So we have to give them permission to do the work, similar to what we've done out there on 19 and 100 when it was coming into town. So this needs to be moved into the Platting Committee this evening, so I need a motion for that.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Foden, second by Mr. Myers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion passed. Thank you.
Okay. Order of committee business. Planning committee, called to order at 6:02 p.m. Okay, first on the agenda is Marion Road, Beal Avenue traffic signal. And I think Mr. Branstetter, you have the floor. Looks like you might have it for a little while.
Just a minute or two.
Hope you got a room up here tonight.
Don't worry about that. I was given strict instructions by one of the women up at the counter that I only had 5 minutes.
Yes.
So I took that 2 already. Marion Beal, just want to put in a new traffic signal. You've noticed that poles are doing this. I know Jeff Dunn in the crowd had to spend some time and money. We'll put up a steel pole and, new controllers, and nothing's really out of date. So that project's been budgeted, back to the 150,000 way back when. That's the short of it. I won't give you the long of it because I don't have any details about it. I don't really like to do this.
All right.
So you have in here an estimate of $150,000.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so then we need to go to, this needs to go to bid then? Is that what you're looking at? Approval and go to bid?
Correct.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, was that in the budget last year or what? Did we
Yeah,
put
it's in the
that
budget for this
Okay.
year. We just did come to you for
The
permission.
money's been set
Yeah.
aside,
Yeah.
so that's.
There's a couple of
Clarify.
projects like that on my list
I thought
tonight.
we discussed that before.
Yeah, we did.
Okay. All right, then. Guess I ask for a motion to request approval to advertise the project. So moved. Do I have a second?
Who else is on?
Second.
All right, all those in favor of these 4 items going up for bid?
And they're in the back of our packet if you want to take a look. The packet on your right, I'm sorry, on the left, it's the very last sheet, I think.
Yeah, we have it right here in our
Oh,
packet.
you got it, no,
We made
Tom's got
copies,
it
yes.
covered, thank you,
Yes.
Todd.
Okay, we're just talking about the Marion Beal signage right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mary Beal sign.
Okay.
So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign, motion
You
passed.
both voted, correct? You voted?
Doug?
I'm not on planning. It's Bruce.
Bruce and Kevin, I'm sorry. Aye.
Because Monica's not here.
Monica's not here, that's
You
right.
need to vote.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
One question really for Bruce Branstetter. Is this a not to exceed number of 150,000?
I mean, that's our cost estimate, we don't need day to day reckoning, but
So it would be 150 plus the percentage we usually.
10% of it.
To put in the legislation,
That
so.
would be nice in case something pops up.
Okay. So we have to
We need to amend
Yeah, amend
that.
your motion.
Amend the motion to add the 10%.
Are you amending it or am I?
You made the motion.
Okay, I motion to amend it to include 150, not to exceed 150 plus the 10%.
Got a second?
And I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Okay. Next item, ODOT paving, North Sandusky Avenue. I guess it goes back to you again.
That is not in my handout to you, but that was part of the small cities grant that we applied for some years ago. Right, North Sandusky, correct. And I think ODOT looking for approval on that. We didn't bid it and advertise it, ODOT did that. That's the project we've been planning on for a while. That money's in the budget. I think you had $400,000 budgeted for the project. I gotta do that, I got a budget sheet in front of me.
And according.
Our share is 203,
This was, yeah, 203,657.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
So
good.
this is the one that we're going to be bringing up after at the council meeting, after the committee meetings this evening. Because they need this by Friday.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
We're in planning still?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if I can ask Bruce a question. Does
Yes.
that 200, does that include the money on the Irving intersection too? With the new
Yes.
lights, everything there?
Yeah, that's your,
Is that-
I did not see what ODOT sent you.
Okay.
Third page it tells you.
It's actually in there a couple times.
Okay,
Yes.
yes, there, I'm sorry.
Programs.
I should have read it first.
That's okay.
I should have seen it. So. I knew it was under the budget, so that made me happy.
He got lost
It's
after
easier to
that.
cut the budget in half than it is to add 20%.
Does anybody have any questions?
Right there.
All right, I need a motion to request the approval of the paving for the 203,000. Yeah. 203,657.
I got one question.
Yes.
It says curb ramps, they're not gonna put new curbs in?
Yeah, we are getting new curbs, but that's curb ramps for the handicap ramps in the corner.
Right, but I mean, so the curbs are staying, it's the old curbs, but new curb ramps.
Getting new curb too, I believe.
Well, it doesn't list it, that's what it is. Well, it says including curb ramps and signal installation, it doesn't say anything about curbs in the legislation.
We need to have it in. I mean, it's what you're asking.
Yeah, I'm asking,
We're doing new curbs there too.
Right.
well, it's not listed.
Yeah, that's probably something they come back and make us correct later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you include that in your motion and we have it covered if they want more.
While we're talking about that, excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
On the corner there, I'm thinking of the Randy's Tire corner, which would be the southeast corner there. And there's a lot of damage from trucks that have turned the corner there, and the sidewalk is out. We're obviously gonna need to put a new sidewalk in there. That probably won't be at ODOT's expense. If we're looking ahead to everything, I think we're gonna need a new sidewalk. It's broken.
Would it be more beneficial for us to plan that into the overall project cost-wise for us, or would it be better for us to hold off?
I'm just
And,
giving you a heads up.
I'm asking from
Yeah.
your standpoint of knowing how this goes.
Yeah.
Or would it be better off to hold off and make sure we don't have any overages if we've got money left after that contingency?
It wouldn't make any difference,
Does that change price-wise is what I'm asking?
I'm sure we'll have to pay for the sidewalk ourselves, because that cannot come out of community funds, or it's gotta come out of,
Right.
or
So I think my
street funds.
question is if we do one versus the other, if we include it in this
Bruce?
versus doing it ourselves, is our cost gonna be any
If we
different?
include the sidewalk, I don't know what the original plan is on that, small cities grant, can we split that 80-20?
I doubt it. because we didn't apply.
I mean, it isn't a large site, it's not gonna be a large expense.
How many linear feet of sidewalk you talking?
Probably,
60.
yeah, max,
5 feet wide, that's 300 square feet,
4,000 or 5,000,
$8 a foot, that's 2,500,
yeah,
so.
okay. I'm just saying, we're gonna,
And if we include it here, then when they come to do the curbs, the same company could do that, and we would just pay for it separately.
Yeah, they would probably do that for you.
and that, we have budget for that in an outside contract.
That makes sense.
So,
Well, you budgeted 400 for the project, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
okay.
So we don't really have any other broken sidewalks all along Sandusky anywhere?
Oh, we got broken sidewalks everywhere in town, but,
No, I mean on North Sandusky.
on North
I'm sure
Sandusky,
there are.
yeah, there's some, yeah. We can look at the whole project and maybe inspect, this. Maybe while you're in town, we can,
I think that area he's referring to is such an issue because of the fact that Keystone used to be there for 9 years, and those semis with fully loaded steel trailers would turn that corner tight, and they just busted that sidewalk all of the years of turning there, which now they're not there, so probably won't be as much of a problem going forward.
well, if they do lease it.
Oh,
eventually,
yeah, down the road, somebody else
We
could
could,
be.
we could actually put like a concrete post or something, maybe to, I know, it's a tough term for a truck, I mean, we have to be very careful how we do that, we don't wanna, we wanna be able to lease the building,
Oh, yeah.
so a truck's gonna need to get around.
And
it.
technically, there's the entrance off of Sandusky Street into that parking lot as well.
Okay.
So,
Yes, go ahead.
we're being asked to approve an exact dollar amount, or is there a way that we can word it to meet ODOT's request to get this done, but leave it open-ended for us to research the additional sidewalks, which we can add on later?
I think just a sidebar, couldn't it? I mean, keep them out, keep us out of the sidewalk business. I mean, do ODOT what ODOT wants and work a sidebar agreement with the mayor and
Okay.
the contractor.
And we could go back and approve that money later.
Yeah.
In a way, you got it within the 400 that's budgeted, so I'm not sure how that all works.
I just wanted to point out that 400 came from the street fund, right?
Yes,
So we can't use that for sidewalks.
that's right.
That's right.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so pretty much we need to do that separate.
Anybody else have any questions? So, can I have somebody entertain a motion?
Do we need to amend it to add the curves in there?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying, we need to.
I'm just afraid if we do any amending to this,
This is straight from ODOT.
this is straight from
You don't
ODOT and it's
mess
just
with
gonna throw a
anything.
wrench big time. I mean, and they want this tomorrow, including the check.
So then,
So I don't think you can amend this particular resolution. That's my opinion.
You know, you're
Kind of with
right.
you, I'm okay doing it on the side at a later date to,
yeah,
but we've got to, make sure we've got the budget money for it, and do an estimate for it, all do
but
it.
if ODOT says we have to have it without curves, I guess. But-
He's talking about the curves, not the sidewalks.
Yeah, I'm talking about curves now. Now Joyce is saying that, geez, if we include curves in ODOT's language, that'll really throw a wrench in us.
We don't wanna throw a wrench into the works.
Let them come back and say we made a mistake, we forgot to add a curve.
Yeah,
And
right.
we also can ask them too, can't we?
Yeah, we can point that out to them. I agree with you, let's get the agreement to them, let's get the check to them, keep the thing rolling.
We can.
Verify that.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask for a motion as is for the $203,657.50 for the project consists of milling and filling Sandusky Avenue between Perry Street and Quaker Road, including curb ramps and a signal installation at Irving, lying within the city of Bucyrus. So, motion, second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Okay. Third item. Again, Bruce. ODOT paving of Quaker Road, State Route 19.
This is from the intersection of State Route 4 to the intersection of State Route 100 Perry Road, approximately 3/10 of split corporation area in this 7-mile resurfacing project, or within the city of Bucyrus, so that's what they need this one for. So it's nice, they're doing a lot of this work here around Bucyrus now, of improving those state highways, but, this is one of those things where we say, yes, we agree that they're going to be working there.
This is in essence just a consent. So.
Yes, just a consent.
It has to be different legislation because the property, the right of way split down the middle. At the township.
Motion to approve the consent agreement as written.
Second.
Any other discussions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, that being said, I will adjourn unless there's anything else. I will adjourn at 6:16.
Call public lands and buildings, we're at 6:16. First up's the land donation. I believe that is at the Home Road Parkland, is that?
Water or the mayor?
Mr. Chairman, this is the land that was announced at previous council meeting 2 meetings ago from Rich and Helen Michaelak, who have generously donated, or what would like to donate, approximately 1 acre of land adjacent to tennis court, across from the swimming pool there, that we would turn in, try to keep it as pristine as possible, turn it into a nature trail. And there's beautiful foliage that goes in there, there's some wonderful trees, and just something that would complement the park. It's very similar to what is on the opposite side, on the farms trail over there, so just be very close right there, and it's a beautiful area. If you walk back through there, it's a very beautiful part of Bucyrus, and we're very happy to have this potential donation to the city.
Mr. Chairman, then,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, you have attached here the copy of an old resolution that we've used once before. We do not have to value this land, is my understanding. The reason you're seeing the one that was valued here in the sample legislation is because we needed that for the FAA. So, but that's just a piece of sample legislation. So that part of it would not be in there, but it would be very similar to what you see there.
Okay, any questions? Does someone have something, Bruce?
No, she answered it. I just wanted to know.
Okay.
I have a question for the law director.
Okay.
Mr. Ratliff, the only question I have is that particular piece of land has a substantial hill that in years past a lot of kids rode bicycles down. Do we have any increased liability concerns to worry about? Was my only question.
No, I mean, it's public land, people are going to do things on public land. It'll be operated as part of the park, and whatever our park rules are going to be them. It doesn't really change our liability from park operations standpoint.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to accept the donation.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, move on to the concrete pile, which I believe we allocated $100,000 to get that crushed up. Right, Bruce?
That is correct.
You're back up again.
Yeah, I just, you have a big pile of concrete, asphalt, rubble from millings and street work and both public and private projects dumped there. And every now and then you grind that up. And so you like to put that out for bid. And last time we did it, like 5 years ago, that was $75,000. We ended up doing this change order with somebody doing a sewer project. So getting people to come in and bid is a little bit of a trick. I've had people from out of town, out of state actually. So I would tell you that estimate's kind of a swag looking at it, how much was here now, how much was there 5 years ago, and what we think it'll cost.
Okay, Bruce, you did.
Well, and when you said stormwater, the way we had done it in the past is that the contractor when they came in to do the stormwater, we required them to use our crushed concrete in place of virgin stone, a certain percentage of it, and doesn't then the contractor, the cost is somehow reflected to us that we get a reduced dollar amount on that construction of that sewer line because they're using our crushed concrete.
That is correct, and that's the theory, and I would, what Jeff Dunn and I talked about is taking a close look at what it's gonna cost to do this, how much product you get out of it, what's the quality of it, and compare it to what we know basically contractors pay for the fill. It may be, frankly, it may be a business we'll recommend you get out of based on the numbers. It's just gonna be a crunch of numbers and decide. But we did use that fill out of there on Charles, a little bit on Spring. We did have some settlement and backfill on Charles. I don't know if it's contractor material right by, not that far from Spring. You probably all seen it. So, we're gonna analyze what we had done and then administration will make a recommendation.
Yes.
I guess I wanted to ask a question about who is it that's put the concrete out there? Do we, the people, is it all our projects that it goes out there? It comes from other areas?
It's both public and private.
Okay.
So you haul stuff out there, you know, somebody does 5 sections of sidewalk at their house, they'll haul it out there. So it is a bit of a service to them, but it could be an expensive service.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at $100,000 here. It's an expensive service.
No, but excuse me, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the only, the option then is we charge people for it, which is a possibility, or
We do
they
that.
leave it in their backyard, you know, or in their front yard. So we've got to, you know, it does a service, like Bruce said.
We already charge people. There's a permit you have to fill out to dump it, the concrete pile. Landon has them right in his office over there, because I had to fill one out, and I busted up some concrete this year and took it out.
We don't charge enough to charge.
Well, I'm saying the
Yeah.
fee's minimal, but
Yeah.
there is.
That's what I mean, yeah, we would have to charge,
I think it's like $10.
well, I know, but it
I'm gonna
takes a lot of $10 to reach $100,000.
I'm just,
Yeah, well, for instance, right now, the swimming pool bottom is being dumped there. And that's ours, for both the kids' pool and the adults, so that's quite a bit of concrete, but that's, a lot, well, you know, some of it is our own, so.
Well, I mean, it's basically then a service to the community.
It's a service to the community, you know, the council will have to decide if they wanna start putting a fee on it, so.
Or we just close it to just city residents and city businesses?
Well, service.
Because they're already paying
Yeah.
city.
Yeah, I think it's.
So they're already paying into it through
Yeah.
property and income
It's
tax.
like, it's, in a way, it's different, but it's like the compost pile, we allow that as a service to the neighborhood, basically, so everybody doesn't have a big pile of leaves and trash, you know, in their backyard, so. So it's all, so council will have to kind of decide where they want to go with that, and can debate that.
So in terms of the dollars on this, has it come out as a loss or a wash in the past, or where do you think?
I wasn't here the last time.
I don't know. That's why Jeff and I are talking about it. That's why we're just gonna take a look at how much it costs to grind up what's out there, determine the volume, and then make a decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think you gotta look at it. I mean, there's a service being provided. I mean, you're offsetting some of this cost too on top of that, so.
That's how we originally looked at it. As we looked at it as providing a service to the citizens, but then we're actually using a useful product that will help. We can get rid of it and put it in for storm drains, you know, as a base. And, you know, and being, we got a rock crusher company right here in the city of Bucyrus.
I don't think they have a portable one though.
They got a couple of them sitting out front.
They can bid on them, they can bid on them. Well, we did talk about, you know, something like that.
I asked Wagner about them using it as a demo, and he said that once in a blue moon, they will bring a customer out and show them a small little bit on a demo, but they're not gonna demo.
Very large pile.
Right. But they won't do the whole thing for free, so. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, can
I'll make a motion.
put this out for bid?
Yep.
Okay, motion, second by McKeever. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving right along. Krauter Road farmland bid.
Just hang on.
Thanks, Bruce.
I guess this is our property on
Thank you.
Krauter Road. You gonna put it out for bid? Oh, it doesn't go along with
Rob, you want to talk about
reservoirs?
this?
The Krauter Road property.
Oh, they're rejecting, oh,
Yes.
oh, all right.
So,
Came in extremely low.
Oh, okay.
so the
Yeah.
law director?
Sure, as I said, the bids for the farmland, this was less than 6 acres, I think, came back in like $170, I think it was. It was a minimal
Per year.
number. Yeah, per year. So there has been some interest, that there are people looking for buildable lots. This would be an ideal location. So I think what the Service Safety Director and the Mayor, Service Safety Director Moore, was looking for was just some authorization from this committee to explore that as maybe this is a buildable area that maybe a developer would be interested in, some housing or something in that area. So preliminary at this stage, it would have to be explored further and a proposal brought back to you, but short term is just looking for kind of your blessing, if you will, for them to start exploring that as a viable option.
If I can add something to that, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
We had a choice of receiving $500 roughly over the next 3 years of rental. Farmland is going for, $8,000-10,000 an acre. So, and there's also approximately 3 acres of wooded along with that too. And so if a developer could come in and turn it into, a nice group of homes, we could get substantially more out of it and use the much needed funds for maybe things in the city like sidewalks or that we are desperate to improve.
This is all in the city limits then?
We were looking at that, and I don't recall, if there were some that were and some that weren't, and if we were gonna do something, it's something we would wanna make sure it was all within city limits, so. Obviously, putting
Yes.
houses out there would be much more beneficial.
No, this is the third property as you're heading south on Krauter off of Wyandotte Road.
Sure. No, I have no idea.
Am I
I
correct?
totally have
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
There was Huggins House and
That was a
then
good call, used to be.
the next one, and
State
then,
Patrol, isn't he in there somewhere?
Yeah.
well, he bought Huggins, yeah,
Oh,
State
okay.
Patrol.
Yeah.
I just remember when Huggins bought it.
You're old.
Okay, so it's the third parcel. I'm just curious to make sure where I was at.
Yeah, and we had looked at it on the map at one point in time, and was a little, wasn't real sure where the city limits line was out there, but it comes close by. And this was previously donated to the city, so there's some questions about that, and we've got to kind of research tile stuff and things like that we got to take a look at. So it's just something, obviously, when you're talking about $500 a year in rental fees, it's definitely something to really explore at this point, especially with the housing market being the way it is right now, and people really desperately looking for places to build.
Especially with the housing study that's going to be out here pretty quickly. And one of the things they're going to suggest to us is we, find some buildable lots. And we didn't want to tie up this land for 3 more years. We thought the exchange for the $500 loss in revenue and then having the flexibility to, to actually valued was a good trade-off. If we decide not to, we can, could always put it out to bid again next year.
Yeah, and that was the thing, because we could rebid it next year, so you're really only putting at risk $170 if you would have earned this year.
Right.
Okay, so you just need a blessing or what?
Yeah, that's it. It really is just kind of an just informational to you tonight that it's going to get explored and maybe some other proposals will be coming back to you. And as you said, the housing study is a key thing too, because that may, once that's in place, then that's the kind of thing developers will use to like financing for big projects if they're going to do something.
So we're just gonna leave it late dormant for this season?
Well, it give you the opportunity to say absolutely no, go out and rent this for $170. You can pass a resolution to that effect if you wanted to.
I guess I would ask for a motion to allow the administration to explore other options here.
I'll make that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Eric's in writing now.
Explore away.
All right. Next up's Mary Street Bridge. I brought this, I didn't know if I spoke to Jeff a while back about it, and he said that nothing had happened yet. Or he was looking for someone, oh, you know something on this?
Well, a little bit.
I don't know.
We've talked about, you got some, excuse me, you got issues on both Mary Street and Poplar. And Poplar is something you can do, with one of the concrete guys like RMH, he does a lot of work in town. Mary's a little more involved, and I was talking to Mark, Baker, county engineer, because, before you bring in a bridge engineer, which we're not, that could be, last time we did that, it was like $4,000 or something. And I asked Mark if we could have his bridge engineer at least go out and look at it with us. I don't know how serious it really is, but I don't feel qualified to answer it. And he said, sure, so I will make sure Jeff does that next week or two when he's in town.
Okay, yeah, I just, it had been brought up to me a while back, and I brought it here, and then, thinking about it, I don't know how many school buses go across that bridge in a day, so, I wouldn't want to wait too long, so.
I remember when that was put in.
Mr.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Representative McLean, meeting I was at, he was there, and he was passing around a map showing bridges in, it was Wyandotte, Crawford, Morrow, and I don't know if Knox was involved in there, but they have certain bridges, and it's something that's come up evidently in Washington DC that they're talking about maybe making some money available, because we're not really in too bad a shape here in Crawford County as far as bridges are concerned. Other counties are in a lot worse shape, but it may come up with some money available. And so if that should come up, this would probably be something that we make sure that we investigated.
Yeah, I don't think the repair is gonna be, it's not in danger of falling down. I noticed today when I drove down to Outdoors, you got the puddle right in the middle, and that's, I think the middle is settling a little bit, that's where a column is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a good point, and Jeff does want to get that taken care of.
I was just looking for an update, so on that one, so. Bruce?
Yeah, Mark Quinn got a hold of me, and that's what he was telling me. He said that we have a structural issue on that bridge on Mary Street because the columns, under the columns are basically hanging from the bridge. There's nothing underneath the columns.
You scour, I don't know.
And so the river's washed the base away from under the support columns.
I'm gonna go further, county engineer, bridge towns.
He was just telling me that that's why we're starting to see a swale in the bridge.
Settlement right in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay, any more on this? Bridge in the wall.
Hopefully it keeps us staying under the bridge.
Okay, next is the art park stage. I wanted to, talk about this. I've heard a lot in the community about it. Kind of wondered what was going on and put all the ifs, ands, and buts to rest, but it's in the mayor's hands, so.
We just don't have any more to report on. We are, The one bid we had was rejected because it was over, it didn't meet the specs of the bid, and from ORDC, and so it has to, we're looking at other options. If it has to be, come back, it'll have to be rebid, and again, we have 14 months, so it's not like we have a lot of time, but we will be making probably a decision on which way we're going here, I would say within a month, no more than a month, maybe 6 weeks, let's say. And then it has to go back out to bid, we'll have certain specs that we're looking for in the stage, and then put it back out to bid.
So,
So the first time we sent out 16 bid package, I think it was, and we had one bid, and it was over the amount. And
Right.
so-
So, the question I had, I guess, was, did we go back to them and say, listen, it's too high, what can we do to?
Well, they have to, if I understand it legally from ORDC, it has to be rebid. You can't, you can, go back and say,
Well, yeah, we would have to rebid it, but let's say, okay, what can we do?
Well-
Okay, we'll rebid it,
Yeah,
and,
say, well,
Come in
here's
on
what
this
has to
then.
be in on,
but you have specifications you have to give them, but then to bid on, so.
Right, which,
I mean-
which we did the first time too. So. And we had a limit, we had $125,000 to work with, of which ORDC's fees come out of there too, so we probably figured, 115, 117,000 that we actually, to make sure we didn't have any city funds in it. And so, we just, So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at some other options, and I'd like to say, by the end of the May, probably the middle of June, we'll have a very clear direction if it's going to be rebid or if another option is going to. So we're getting close.
Okay, so I want to ask, before we get off of this one, I just want to ask council members, because the rumor has it was a boxcar, and I just wanted to ask council members what they thought of it, what their constituents have thought of it, so.
Well, can I clarify that, Mr. Chairman?
Okay, yeah.
You're just going to plop a boxcar in there, that wouldn't be what we would do. It would be, if you'd see some of the boxcars that are used at stage, they're not actually like a dilapidated boxcar. It would be made to fit in the shape, and you'd have a stage out in the front. The boxcar would be used as a back, your dressing rooms, and it would be handicap accessible. It would be have lighting. It would be decorated artistically. So it wouldn't be. So we wouldn't just plop up like some people put on the internet,
Well, yeah, I understand that.
I just wanted to clarify that for everybody, but if that isn't going to work out, it isn't going to work out. We would not certainly put something in there that doesn't fit the park. So we're trying to get the nicest stage. We're trying to get a stage that not only is for music, but for artistic shows and for plays. And to have a single stage do all that can be a little bit difficult, because you have to have dressing rooms in the back on it, and a roof and electric and lighting and sound stage, sound equipment, all those types of things. So, and trying to do it within budget can be a little bit difficult. But
I understand.
so,
Mr. Heber, did you have something?
Is this gonna be a three-season stage, or is this gonna be?
well, the good question.
What is it gonna be used even
Well,
all four seasons? Weather permitting?
No, it's probably gonna be, the park we have closed off in the winter months, mainly because we don't have enough staff to keep it shoveled. And we probably got.
Keeps the salt off the building.
Well, it keeps the salt off there too. There's things that we have to, it's a liability issue, obviously. We don't want people falling on when there's 2 or 3 or 4 inches of snow there too,
So
we
basically
would
a
probably-
three-season.
Last year, people used the stage through Christmas. The Santa Claus house was there. I would envision it being open till that time, weather permitting, till about.
It always depends on weather.
Right, you close in January, February, probably open up March or April. So, and, so when the Browers Festival stage was there temporarily. I mean, it got a lot of use. People were using it afterwards and used it for pep rallies. I mean, a stage is important there. I mean, we always had, we just didn't have enough funds the first time around to put one in. We need to have one in by the end of June next year, 2020. It's got to be in. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. So, or we have to pay everything back. So there will be a stage in there.
So is this got a, does it, the other question I have with that, does this have to be a permanent?
Yes, it has to be a permanent stage.
Structure?
It has to be a permanent structure. We cannot put a temporary structure in there. It's got to be a permanent structure.
Okay, I just want to make
So,
sure.
It has to be aesthetically pleasing, functional,
Okay,
and number 3, in budget.
okay,
So
that's fine, I just
so
was.
we're going to do all 3 of them.
Thank you.
Just related to the stage, the stage, I'm surprised to hear that we're gonna have dressing rooms in that too. I guess I just thought it was
I guess
one
changing rooms, I guess would probably be more appropriate.
a stage only was what
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking,
Yeah.
but, you know, and this is different opinion I've been given, and I kind of can, I kind of agree in that, you know, as it relates to the boxcar idea, you know, I don't think it's necessarily a terrible idea or anything. However, I think the theme of the park is more theater and cinema, and I think the boxcar would kind of be out of context with the theme of the park being more related to the fact that this used to be the site of the theater, and it's more theater and arts driven. So I guess I would be more in favor from a stylistic standpoint, just seeing more of a stage that seems more appropriate for theater and the arts versus, you know, a rail car or a boxcar as the stage. That's just, and that's feedback I've heard from a lot of people that have commented about it, so. And you asked for opinions.
Yeah, that's what we want.
And I guess then
Okay.
we get with that,
Okay.
there's a group that breakfast every morning that gets
Yeah.
together and that they are very down to earth type guys and that are there and everything, and you could have knocked me over with a feather, but they all totally love the idea of a boxcar going in there. So he said if you can make it look like a stage, so, you know, there are all sorts of opinions.
There's a
And
bunch of opinions.
I'm sure
It's
that,
not a bit all bad on the boxcar. So,
yeah,
you know, that's not, I've heard a little, but
Yeah.
some
We want to,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, we want to do something that's going to look nice and the community's going to be proud of. But we also want to have, you know, it is an art park, you know, and we want to make sure that, you know, that it's an attention grabber. When people drive by, I mean, it's an impressive park. We met with a group in northern Ohio, and it was actually about the bicentennial. And they said, you know, they loved our art park, they loved the murals, you know, they complimented us, much bigger town than us. They said, you guys are way ahead of us in your public art, you know. And so we have a reputation for having good artwork in this community, and some of it is controversial, you know. So when we get closer, you know, we'll put it out there and then we'll show you, and we'll see how where it goes. Whatever we get, whether we're going to have to bid again or not, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
We have several members out here who are with the theater. What are your opinions?
Joe?
Joe?
Joe gives me his opinion every day.
Not every day, 3 days a week. My opinion is we need a stage that goes with the design of the park. Roger Rush is from Bucyrus. He's got the design made. It's absolutely beautiful. It would go along with everything we've done in that park. So whatever it takes to do it, we need to do it. And Jeff knows how I feel. We've got extra money if you can use it.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Okay, and so, and it may come down, you know, it may get rebid there, so you're gonna have to, you know.
It can't be let, with the additional funds that are available now,
It has to be rebid. Once ORDC, the people major grant, rejected, it has to be put up to bid again. Yeah, so,
They rejected it?
yeah, it was rejected because it didn't meet the specs of the bid, so, because.
well, just to let you all know, we have the money now to pay for the stage the way Roger has it designed. It's not part of the money that come from the state, but it comes from people's hearts in this town.
Thank you, Joe.
Great.
Did you have a question?
I was wondering if we could request an extension from the state on the deadline of next summer, potentially to add some more time on getting a permanent stage put in.
We're gonna have it done by then. I don't really, we're gonna have it done. It's because we need a stage and we just, I wanted to have it in this year. I would like to have it in next year
For the bicentennial.
For the bicentennial, the Browers Festival coming up. Yeah, so we'll have it done. Asking for an extension right now isn't something we're considering, so, but we're.
Mr. Rush?
I've got some pictures of the scale model that we built, if you guys would like to see it. It does have a back on it. We initially was asked to do it without electric and
If you just hand it to Mr. Schott, he'll get it around.
well, keep the cost down, but then we was told later that we had to have electric and lighting, which our bid does include that. Nothing was said about dressing rooms at the time, nor is it on the request for the bid that we received anyway. That's laid out of the same stone that the arch out front was laid out of. It's mahogany decking, so you don't have to do any maintenance to it. For 50 years, you can leave it and don't even need to stain it if you don't want to. We was gonna oil it to start with, so it kept its color. That's granite and marble tile laid on the back. It has a handicap ramp also. The stage is the height of the maximum we can and still stay within the law of not having to have a rail all the way around it. We have engineered drawings from J&F, and they're the ones that actually did it. I would be a subcontractor of them doing stonework and doing woodwork. And building the deck, they'll build the roof and took care of all the permits and everything else.
A lot of the work is already done for us.
There's a picture of a fence post right beside that scale model of glass block and aluminum. That's what was gonna be around the handicapped rail. We came in at 18,000 over, but the initial bid for the stage that somebody gave me was 150. We cut it down just as much as we possibly could. And then originally I had it designed with just a fence in the back, and Joe decided that a wall might be better to give privacy for the people that are acting to be behind the wall, and then they come in on the stage, which I agreed. It was more expensive to do the stone and that than it was originally with just a steel pillar and the fence. So I just moved the fence to the handicap rail, eliminated laying all the stone. I'd already bought all the stone, and it's behind my shop.
Okay.
We built enough posts to do the thing initially, because it was kind of looking like we might get the building. As far as I know, we hit every spec with the price.
Okay, do we have anything else? Thanks for coming in. Oh, yeah.
Just, I'm curious, when you say it has to potentially be rebid, would that be by us or by ORDC? Okay. And can we request that, or is that all?
Oh, no,
How?
we would request it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right around.
Yeah, if you're gonna bid it at a higher price, if there are community donations that, that make a difference, then it goes out to bid at that higher price. You solicit bids at.
So if these gentlemen were interested in donating to it, we would get that squared away first, and then bid it out to the higher price with, the bid would specify X amount coming from this source, X amount coming from that source, or?
The bid would just say it's a maximum not to exceed amount.
Oh, so just, if we had that straight out there, the number just goes up with the amount of money they give us, okay?
Yeah, I was curious why it was put out that way. It was my understanding he was gonna try to raise the difference. I've got a letter from the mayor telling me, you know, he liked the design, that additional money would have to be raised to make up the difference. But then in the letter that was sent to the state, it was deliberately put in there, no other money could be added.
So, is there a way we can, is there like a bank or something that the citizens of Bucyrus could donate to as well? I mean, and actually increase the size of the pond?
Tour, let's wait and see what we're gonna put out to bid, so.
It's an administrative function, so it's pretty much all in their hands. But I just thought we would put our opinion in here since there are people out there we represent, so.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Any other questions on this? Okay. Okay. I guess we'll move on to city parking lots. I was approached at the parking lot behind, and I can never keep the numbers straight. I see you have a map for it. Behind the Dillingers and, is that number 2? No, that's
3.
3, okay. They used to have signs up there, didn't they? Oh, okay. Behind, and I don't know, we just gotta figure out some way to get these things repaired because,
Mr. Chairman?
yes,
Jeff and I were talking about this, I know they do need repaired, all of them have some issues. This year, we're done with everything we had to do at City Hall here, the new roof, the new boilers, chillers, air handlers. We invested quite a bit in this building to make sure it lasts another 50 years, as done this year. So next year, we should have, you know, we can put that in the budget, start to get a plan to get these parking lots done.
well, and I guess I brought up before that, you know, I don't know how many years ago it was, we did away with the parking meters and meter maids and stuff, meter maids, although the last one I don't think was a maid. Anyhow,
Can't say anything.
yeah, that's meter person. Anyhow, I don't want to go back to that, but, I mean, we have to, somehow we have to generate money to keep these things beyond, beyond the next. I mean, we can fix them, they'll be good for 20 years, okay? 20 years, we gotta do it again.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, I don't go into, I mean, our downtown is not any downtown today is not a mall type town like it used to be in the early days, all the way probably through the 80s. They're all destination shops. And everyone in town has to draw business from, maybe 20, 30, 40 mile radius. So you've got to bring people in. There's a lot of competition for stores. And I get to other towns too. I don't know anybody that's still even using me, except when you go to the big cities, Chicago, Columbus, Cleveland. They're using meters. I think we turn over fast enough. Now, there are some issues in these lots, but our downtown streets turn over pretty quickly. For the most part, there's not workers parking there all day. There's a few. We've always had that issue. If you're going to do something, one of our tools was just thrown out in court. And that was the ability to mark tires. You can't do that anymore.
I just got thrown out.
So now you're looking at these few parking lots. Is there going to be enough revenue to be able to support somebody to go around? We'd have to hire somebody. We don't have enough. We aren't going to be putting a police officer doing it. So is there going to be enough revenue to justify?
Well, yeah, I understand.
I know
We need
it's
to
an issue.
brainstorm or something. Yes, Mr. Meyer.
Two things, when we talked about this the last time, Mr. Adams, I don't know if it was actually set as a plan to do, but I think you were gonna approach Bakers to see if they were interested in owning that lot because of what's going on, and maybe do that through the CIC, and then that could finance repair of the other lots. That was one question, if anybody's reached out to them yet.
We did have a meeting.
Okay, and then the other one was having dinner up at Dillinger's, Mr. Ridgway came and sat with me and expressed that he does have interest in owning parking lot number 2, but Mr. Rockwell, who owns the Crazy Fox, does not. And Mr. Ridgway explained the biggest reason he would like to own it is, he says on any given night you can go out there and you see a lot of different illegal and unsightly things that are going on in and around the parking lot. And he has no ability to do anything about it. He said if he had ownership of it, he could.
He can pick up the phone and call the police.
And I shared that with him. He
Yeah.
said that he does that, and usually they're gone by the time. But the point I wanted to make is that he shared that with me, that he would like to also do some. He wanted to know if he was allowed to power wash it. And I told him to come and speak to the administration because I didn't know how that worked. But so he does have desire to clean it up, and he would like to own it. And I shared with him what we discussed the last time, where there's concern about not having enough parking for businesses during the day, and he said he would be more than willing to do whatever he needed to legally to allow the city to continue to advertise it as a city lot or a free parking area during the day. His interest is in the evening times, obviously. So I told him I would share that.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
does he have dumpsters out there? He has dumpsters, too, okay. So some of the issues, like you brought up before, Dan, about the dumpsters and, and they're not even city dumpsters.
Yeah, we're not even making any money off it.
So, I think we seriously need to address it. You bring up a good point, but we need a plan. What are we gonna do? Are we gonna own these lots? Or are we gonna sell them and have somebody rent them out on their own? I think there's good points on both sides.
Right. And maybe we need to sell some and keep some. And the money we get from selling, we can repair the others.
For everybody that's thinking right now, why don't we use street levy money for this? We can't. Not allowed.
Unless we name it a street.
Unless we name it a street, yeah, with a stripe down the middle.
Street parking lot number 2.
Okay, well.
Excuse me, can I say one more thing?
Yes.
And I know the tax increase for the gas revenue that was just passed in the Ohio Senate and House, I got a clarification today, that money is not going to be able to be used for parking lots. I asked about that, so, or sidewalks, so.
But we could, if we sold the land on Krauter Road, we could use that to build parking.
We sure could.
Okay.
Sure, and we also could put sidewalks.
Sidewalks.
Okay.
Should Burger King property be used to help us as well?
Yeah, those funds are being returned to the city, so we can general fund it and probably, it has a, I forget the exact language, but it has a capital improvements.
Well, I guess that was just kind of a discussion that we hadn't discussed for a while, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'll make this, why don't you come in and we'll come maybe talk about it, get a plan and
Yeah.
get your ideas and we don't bore everybody and then maybe we get something together.
Okay.
I know parking lot is very exciting to some people, but we might actually take a walking tour of that sometime.
Yeah, well, and the reason, like I said, the reason I brought it back was that one behind it. And apparently it's getting in pretty bad shape, and I meant to go down there. So. Okay, so now we're on to city reservoirs. I'm sure this is good news.
Two gentlemen back here are ready to jump up for this one.
All right, you have a packet from us on your left. First thing on there is a map. That same map is here. I think you all remember Barry with his environmental company. He's been working closely with John and the city on the reservoirs. We were here, 6-8 months ago, I think, talking about it. Doing a lot of homework with the city and with ODNR. I just want to point out, if you look at your map, you can see where each reservoir is. I always got confused because I call my numbers and people here calling my names, so I put both of them on the map this time. And the other thing we did was put the volume and the age. Reservoir 2 is 100 years old. That was the year my dad was born, 1919. And it's just, that's the one that struggled and will come back. But the red arrows, I added those, we added them, because it shows how the water flows from one to the other and into the river. People ask. And so Reservoir 2 kicks into Sandusky here. But the interesting thing to note, Reservoir 4 and 3 drain into 1. And the embankment that holds Reservoir 3 has Reservoir 1 on the other side of it. That becomes critical if you would drain Reservoir 1 too much because of that embankment loses its strength. And the other thing is when we get into inundation mapping, we got to look at all kinds of scenarios. What happens if 4 gives, the rest of them are going to start giving, or if 3 gives, 2 gives, 3 gives. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios. And I just thought it was useful. I found it helpful for us. Then again, I'm an engineer, so I get excited about this kind of stuff. We have outlined the work scope of items and the schedules that ODNR has asked, well, more than asked, they've said you need to be. You want to walk through those, Barry?
Yeah, but I can. ODNR, which has oversight for the 4 reservoirs, asked us to put together an outline of the work that is needed to be for the 4 reservoirs in accordance with the site inspection reports that we got in November. So we put together a letter with Jeff and Robert. It was submitted to ODNR for their review and comments. Not altogether unsurprisingly, they came back, they agreed to 1 of the 3 items that we had put together. The second item, they said, it sounds good, but we want you to put more specific detail and dates in. And the third item, which was for reservoir number 2, they smacked us pretty good. We got what is called a chief's order that basically says you shall do these items. Now, I'll get to reservoir 2 here in just a moment. The one item that...
How about Reservoir 2 is the pines?
Is the pines.
That's
Thank
what
you.
everybody here knows it is. It's the
Okay.
pines. Okay. That's the bad one.
Yes, that's a bad one.
Okay.
Anyway, in the first item was, we said, okay, we are going to prepare what are called the emergency action plans. Now, the emergency action plans consist of 2 components. It consists of an emergency preparedness plan, which is kind of the text of what we're going to do should one of the reservoirs fail. The second part is the inundation mapping, so that if it does fail, what are we looking at in terms of the flooding downstream from the reservoir? Now, one of the things we have to understand is in inundation mapping for dam breaks, it's not your traditional flooding. Think of it as an instantaneous breach and an entire water comes out. Not a little bit at a time, everything in one shot. It's the absolute worst case scenario, okay? That's the state regulations, that's what we have to follow.
An example of one, even though they scratched out the city name, we know that's Dayton. You can see it with the kind of mapping that they look for. And that's in the bottom of the package.
The light blue one.
Yeah. Anyway, under this particular item, we broke up, we said we're going to do the emergency preparedness plans, which we call the EPPs. Then we have data gathering, because we have to gather a tremendous amount of data in order to do the inundation mapping, which is a form of flood mapping. This includes everything from, literally from the reservoirs down to 1 to 2 miles south of the city on the Sandusky River. So there's a lot of data that we have to gather. We also have, there are 11 crossings of Sandusky within the city. So we have to make certain that as we start to do our modeling, that we have the appropriate information on the bridges. So we're working with both the city and the county, ODOT, and we're also working with 2 different railroad companies to get that information. Once that data gathering is done, then we can actually start the mapping, which we call the inundation modeling and mapping. We also have been requested on specifically for reservoir number 1, Neff Reservoir, to perform what we call an H&H study, a hydraulic and hydrology study. We were requested to do that because preliminary work done by ODNR indicates that the spillway is not designed properly to handle what I'm going to call the new flood standard. As one can imagine, over time, these flood standards change. Well, the new one now that we have to look at is a much bigger flood. So, 119 years ago, the standard was, there was none. So they used their best engineering guess. Now with the standards that we have, and the flood that we have to look at, the spillway is inadequate. Now, I'm kind of jumping around here a bit. The study that we're doing has got 2 purposes. Right now, Neff Reservoir is identified as a Class 1 dam. That's the highest hazard dam that the state has. That means that it has the potential for damaging public and private property and has the potential for the loss of human life if it flooded. So, we have an option. Can we lower the pool? In other words, the standard water elevation, in engineering terms, we call that the pool elevation. Well, if we drop that down so it's no longer a level 1 or Class 1 dam, that gives us a lot of leeway. But if we drop it, we're still probably going to have to do some work for the spillway. If we decide not to drop the pool level, we're still going to have to do some work for the spillway. So it's going to come down to a matter of which is the cheaper method. It isn't going to be so much, well, let's lower it so we can lower the class. It's going to come down to is what's the cost. Anyway, once the inundation modeling and mapping is done, we generate a series of maps. The one that Bruce was showing you, believe it or not, is one of 8 maps for the city of Dayton. But the city of Dayton is a whole lot bigger than we are. So we will have a series of these maps showing different flood conditions. There are 3 flood conditions. One's called a sunny day, which is kind of a normal 100-year flood event. Then they have one that's called 50% probable maximum flood, and then we have 100% probable maximum flood. So we have 3 different conditions that we have to look at, and it's going to result in 3 different levels of potential flooding through the city. Now, they agreed with our schedule for that. The EPPs we have prepared for the 3 reservoirs. The first one is being reviewed because it's basically is the model for the other 2. That is due the middle of this month. So basically we have about a week and a half before we have to submit it to ODNR for review. The data gathering we've estimated will take till about the end of August. We'll also have the spillway study, if we can call it that, also completed by that same time. However, the mapping is going to take a lot longer, so that won't be done until the end of November. ODNR agreed to that schedule, so we're good there. The one that they wanted additional dates on and more specific information is one we called remaining items. This was everything else that was in the site inspection reports
that is not associated with preparing the emergency action plans. Most of that is maintenance issues. Some very substantial maintenance issues, but mainly maintenance issues. I've walked the site. Jeff with Branstler has walked the site with me. We've had city personnel walk the site with me. So we've got a pretty good handle on that. We've actually generated spreadsheets for that. However, those are currently being reviewed. Some of the spreadsheets are fairly lengthy, but they're such things as confirming when we're going to mow. What are the conditions when we mow? Repairing rodent holes. One of the things most people don't understand is, you know, it looks really nice to see an earth embankment with trees growing up on it. No, ODNR says absolutely not. Now, there are technical reasons for that. So that means that in particular, on Reservoir 1, on Neff, we have a lot of work to do on the embankments because we have a lot of trees and a lot of bushes that have to be taken out. Taking those out are going to cause other issues, which means we're going to have to do some backfilling. We're going to have to do some repair work. Originally, we had actually put together the schedule to stretch a lot of these maintenance items out until the end of the year 2020. ODNR didn't like that. So now we're going to have to bring that back in. And Jeff Wagner is looking at in terms of manpower, cost, timing. So we do not have schedules for that yet. All we have is we know what needs to be done. And Bruce, do they have a copy of this?
Yeah, they do.
Okay. If you look at that, it's item B is the remaining items. So it gives you pretty much an idea of what it is we have to do. Now, the third item, which is the one where we received the chief's order. We attempted to explain to ODNR that we were very early on in discussions, and I mean very early on in discussions about what to do with the reservoir. Basically, we have three options. First option is to bring it into compliance. I can tell you right now that's very, very expensive. You're probably looking in excess of $1 million. Second option is to go ahead and breach the dam. In other words, drain the reservoir. Convert it into parkland, a wildlife refuge, something of that nature. Third option is to sell the reservoir in its entirety with all its nasty problems. Okay. Which means that we can, as Bruce and I can look at kind of the first two steps, bringing it into compliance or breaching it. Those are technical issues. But the third item is one that the council has to discuss and make decisions on. Now, ODNR did not like that. They wanted hard decisions. And it's not entirely surprising that they wanted that. Pine Reservoir, 100 years old. It's quite clear that the embankment has got problems. It is leaking. The spillway is leaking. Although the spillway was, when it was built very well. It's the first time I've ever seen square rebar. Yeah, and this is some really hefty rebar. Now, the city did work, how many years ago, Bruce? Out on the spillway. Is that about 8 years ago? Problem being there is no documentation, ODNR didn't know about it, which is not good. We've actually, everything that we've been doing here in the last 8 to 10 months, ODNR knows exactly what we're doing. We've got pictures of what we've done. I mean, we're keeping them in the loop. But they decided to push very hard on the chief's order. Now, the chief's order always comes with the ability to say, hey, wait a second. You know, we don't like this. You know, we're going to request a hearing. The city decided to request a hearing. May 13th. Is that the date, Robert?
It was, they sent us an order saying that it was May 13th, but then they, on their own administrative powers, set aside that date and told us they would communicate with us what the final date was going to be with the attorneys for their side.
Okay.
So we have a little bit of reading.
Yes, we have a little bit of breathing room. Because if the chief's order is implemented, we've got a lot of work to do in a very short period of time, no matter who owns the dam. Because ODNR, I mean, it's the way their regulations are written. It's just, hey, the dam's got problems, you gotta fix it. So, right now, we're on schedule, at least with the first part, preparing the emergency action plans. We are relatively on schedule with the remaining items. We just have to work with Jeff on scheduling these specific items. And then the third item, basically, Robert is the point of contact for the issue on the chief's order. So, questions?
Mr. Shaw.
So how often has reservoir number 2 been inspected by ODNR in the past?
The first letter we got concerning the reservoir was 1978.
Okay.
And then by state law, they are required to inspect every 5 years.
Okay.
They haven't quite stayed to that schedule, but close enough. The last 2 ones were 2013 and 2018.
And we pay for that inspection?
No.
No? Okay.
No. We pay a permit fee to have a reservoir.
Okay.
And that is what pays for their inspections and their oversight.
So we pay a permit fee, but ultimately that goes to pay for the inspection?
Yes. Yes.
Do you have, I have no idea what the cost of that permit fee is. Do you? Ballpark?
That was a ballpark.
Yeah, right, everybody loves it.
More than $10.
Yeah, there you go. I'm thinking it's around $700 or so,
Yeah.
$800.
Yeah, it's not much. Now, the good news is, once we bring the 3 reservoirs, 1, 3, and 4 into compliance, we get a discount on the yearly permit, ranging from 10% to 25%.
Thank you.
Okay, to finish out this, that you have estimated fees in here
Yes.
for each of these items, and worst case scenario is $450,000.
Yes,
And to be done and that doesn't even mean doing the work.
that is correct.
That's just the plans, the data gathering, the modeling, the maintenance, and inspections. That isn't even the work.
Correct. Now, the cost under the operation, maintenance, and inspection plan, we have approached ODNR, and they are quite interested. The city was required by Ohio EPA to do asset management for your water, stormwater, sanitary. The system that the city purchased is, we can change it to a certain extent. Working with Landon, we have found that we are actually able to set each of the reservoirs as its own asset. Put all the information in there that we need, put in when we have to do inspections, when we have to mow, when that's done, it can be put in as being completed. And it basically serves the function of the operations and maintenance plan. So, right now, they've tentatively agreed with us that they're going to allow us to put all this information into the asset management plan, and at the end of this year, we will lay everything out to ODNR to show how it does match their requirements. And the nice thing about that is every piece of information we put in there will be saved, because that's one of the issues we've had so far is we've only been able to find drawings for reservoirs 3 and 4. 1 and 2, of course, are so old, 100-year-old dams, chances are we won't find much.
So have we ever been fined for being out of compliance with the reservoir number 2 by ODNR?
No. The
Okay.
chief's order is the closest, and it's not really a fine.
Yeah,
It's an order that says you shall do these
but there's
things.
never been a chief's order
Prior
in the
to
past.
this, no.
I mean, that's, to me, material for the city hearing that, you know, we've never been fined in a previous inspection, and, you know, we've never had a chief's order in a previous inspection, and now it's doom and gloom, and we'll spend $450,000 right now, no help from the state that I'm aware of.
Be careful, the 450,000 covers most of reservoirs 1, 3, and 4.
Okay,
Okay?
so it's not all Reservoir 2?
It's not all reservoir 2.
Okay.
And in the site inspection reports and the previous letters, they've actually identified areas where we were not in compliance, and they requested that we get into compliance.
Right.
So, but no, they have never come out and said, well, you haven't done it, so, you know, here's a $10,000 fine.
And keep in mind, going against us, that original letter back to 78, we had most of those. They've been telling us since 78, you need to do X, Y, and Z, and we have not done X, Y, and Z since then. So we've got 40, 50 years of telling ODNR to, you know.
Thumb your nose.
Yeah. And, you know, that was one of the bases of our appeals is, well, you know, we've been telling us for 4 years and it hasn't collapsed yet, so one of us is wrong.
True, but also, I mean, we've been out of compliance then
Yes.
since 1978, and they haven't forced us into compliance. I'm not suggesting that that's a good thing on our part, but the current taxpayer is now gonna pay the price for them not having enforced this since 1978. So to me, that's an issue that, to me, should be pushed back on ODNR to say, why is the city of Bucyrus now being strapped with this huge expense, and there's never been any compliance enforcement on this issue since 1978?
Yes.
Barry, didn't you mention that Bucyrus was down the list and they were, you know, going all the way down to, down to
The way-
our size?
The way ODNR handles, I'm gonna call them the dam inspections, is when they originally were given their statutory direction, they started at the dams that were the absolute worst of the worst. You know, they might fail any time now. So they have been working down their list, because they actually have a risk assessment list. And as they get down further and further the list, you know, basically communities and private owners who were way down here who didn't have much risk are now at the top of their list. That's what happened to us. I mean, 78 was kind of the first shot across the bow that, you know, we're gonna be getting there soon.
Soon.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bring us to state. Real quick. Go ahead, Doug. Good.
I've got another question, Barry. The $400,000+ figures for estimated fees there, how much would that be reduced if council decides to sell Pines Reservoir? What can be eliminated from that?
Well, most of these fees are for 1, 3, and 4. We have not,
Are there any fees at all for 2 there?
we've got costs in there for the EPP and the inundation mapping, okay? Because that's gonna be the first thing that ODNR will request. In particular, if the chief's order is held, we'll have to get that done. So you're probably, you're probably gonna be able to drop the cost, what, Bruce, about 50?
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of the country,
Yeah, 'cause-
we need, that's right.
Because, I mean, a lot of the data gathering, of course, starts at where Reservoir 1 comes into Sandusky and goes all the way down. Well, for Pine Reservoir, where it comes in, there's not that much difference from there down to where Reservoir 1 is. But we still have to have all that data from Reservoir 1 down.
And I think we've got a big range in the data gathering because if you kind of see that date map, you're gonna look at bridges and culverts downstream and, you know, what their elevations are and how open they are. We just don't know how, number one, you don't know how available that information is. And secondly, the city, and I've seen John out with it, the city's got a GPS. Some of the data gathering, you know, work with our folks, you can put somebody like John, if they can spring loose, to do a lot of data gathering too. For instance, on Southern Avenue, you know, we didn't as-built drawing of the sewers. Those all hit our own GPS points. Well, he doesn't have to map that as part of the asset management. We just give him that information because the GPS data is the same. So I think there's a way to collaborate together and make this work, and it's a matter of staff, and it is available. And you know, the more you all can do yourselves, obviously, the less expensive it will be.
One of the big items under the data gathering is gathering what I'm going to call topographic mapping. ODOT pioneered the use of a type of mapping called LiDAR, which is a type of aerial radar. Very accurate, it's very good. The problem is, it doesn't see through bridges. So you have some data gaps there. The other problem that you've got is ODNR only releases the LiDAR data after they've gone through a full data check. We've reached out to the county engineer, because he has access to LiDAR data that we do not. So we're Jeff McMullen with Randstad is working with the county engineer to see what information we have. We've also reached out to the two railroad companies for their bridges to see what topographic information they have. So as we get more of this information from other sources, that means that we don't have to go out and actually do that work. But right now, we don't know. So we're having to look at kind of the worst case condition.
Yes.
Just one quick question to back step a little bit, as you were saying about the operation, maintenance, and inspection things, the system that we have incorporated
Yes.
to help to alleviate some of the costs there. So in a sense, what you're saying is it could help to alleviate the $60,000 worth of cost for the.
It could easily cut it anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 out. Because that means, quite frankly, I don't have to write it.
Right, that's what I was asking.
Yes.
Okay.
Because now, these plans have to be written individually for each reservoir. We can't write one master plan for all the reservoirs. Each one has to have its own. Which is why when Jeff started talking about your asset management and we got together with Landon, it was like, hey, this could work.
Yeah.
I mean, you've already paid for it.
Right.
You've already got the people trained for it. It's just a matter of working with them to make certain that we get the data in and we get the appropriate schedule set and things of that nature.
I guess my question is, why would anyone want to buy the pines? I mean, are they going to be faced, anybody that we sell it to, are they going to be faced with exactly the
Yes.
same these
Yes.
rules?
Yes. Now, I mean, to be honest with you, the reason you would buy a lake is to put very expensive homes around it. And that's a possibility. I mean, he could go in and do the work that's necessary to bring the embankment into compliance, to bring the spillway into compliance, and potentially homes up around the edges that are probably a very high cost. To me, that's the only reason I would buy one, is if I could turn a substantial profit from the redevelopment.
Yes.
Okay, so we basically are gonna have to eliminate number one and number two. That's basically what we're gonna have to do. We're gonna have to eliminate it in some form that is no longer a reservoir. Is that what you're saying?
That's an option. Yes.
So, what is an educated guess for eliminating those? Are we talking 3 million?
No. Do you remember what?
Just so,
I think we're in a half.
I know I can't hold you to it, but we actually.
I think we were under $500,000.
To eliminate both of those reservoirs?
Yes.
1 and 2.
That's on top of the 450.
Well, if we decide to eliminate Reservoir 1 as well, then that will change
Some of that.
some of that, the
Okay.
whole dynamics, so.
But it doesn't replace, I mean, it's in addition to what we're talking here.
Yes, yes.
So we're talking probably around $750,000 by the time all is said and done.
Well,
Give or
also,
take.
but you're-
I just want
Yes,
to.
you're probably in a good guess.
Okay, I'm not asking for
Yeah.
exact figures because we don't have them. I just wanted an educated guess.
Now, the other thing that we should bring up is Reservoir 1 and Reservoir 2 are no longer used as a public water supply for the city.
We had to do that, didn't we?
Yes,
EPA.
yep, that was an Ohio EPA decision. Primarily, you use Reservoir 4 as your primary reservoir, and then in the winter, you'll use Reservoir 3. Now, to be honest with you, removing and getting rid of Reservoir 2 is going to be a lot easier than Reservoir 1, just because of 1 and 3 being right next to one another.
Okay, you answered my question.
Okay.
Mr. Foden, you have a question?
Does the private owner have any other options that the municipality doesn't for taking care of that reservoir as far as breaching it or?
No, he would be held to the same regulations and standards that we would. And one of the things that would also have to be addressed, and Mr. Robert would probably pull his hair out, is if this does go to a private owner, what is the city's responsibility and what is his responsibility if that fails? Because you're no longer in control.
That was pretty much what I was just going to comment on, that Rob had pretty much established in a previous meeting that we would still be on the hook for liability if we sold this and then the new owner had any of these problems potentially that we're discussing, so. I don't
There are some limited things we can do, contracts and indemnification clauses and insurance policies and all manner of things can be written into it. When we did talk to ODNR though, they were very specific in that that they're gonna approve any agreement and it's gonna contain their timelines and their determination as to what has to be done. So there's not going to be, to get back to your question, there's not going to be wiggle room. The only difference may be, private owner may not have to go through the same bid processes and incur some of those costs that we do. But that'd be about the only difference.
Okay, I'm just a little concerned, we've had trouble getting people to cut the grass in town, let alone drain it.
Fix it in.
Drain the reservoir, so.
Well, at least for the mowing on the reservoirs, the state standard is 18 inches. So we can kind of let it go.
Anything you have to do with the.
Any other questions or comments or concerns?
So, Mr. Chairman, I think then we're going to be looking to hear the results of the meeting that's going to be scheduled, or?
I don't know when that'll be scheduled yet. I expect fairly short order them to contact us and we get some dates set up. Obviously, we'll have to we got a lot of moving people to coordinate on those days. So we'll try to do that. In the meantime, we'll look at all available options and you guys may want to think about inviting the one person that's expressed an interest to come in and talk to you about it.
Yeah,
I know when he was here before, it wasn't houses, he was talking about some sort of fishing club thing or something like that.
Yeah, that might not be a bad, I wouldn't mind knowing, is it like in Columbus or something, or is it here, or?
No.
This meeting?
It'll be wherever they tell us to meet.
Well, yeah.
We'll try to get them here because that'll be easier for us, but yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't mind listening along too, but, okay, any? Mr.
If you don't do anything with the chief's order. Just thumb your nose at it just like we have for the last 41 years. What did they do then?
And when they come to town, tell them where Doug lives.
I want the answer to the question.
If we ignore the chief's order, chances are it will go straight from the chief's order to administrative order, similar to what you received from Ohio EPA, where everything is written as thou shalt. So at that point, they just come in and say, you'll do it.
And you don't have the money.
Yeah. If you don't have the money, they don't care, you're gonna do it.
I was just, because I had heard that they would come in and breach it themselves.
There are certain conditions that they'll do that.
And I've also heard that if they do that, they know, they need no inundation mapping, they need no survey, they
Correct.
can just come in and do it.
Yes.
So I guess my
They're
question
the
is,
regulator.
why are we held to a higher regard?
Everyone that has a reservoir is
Right.
held to a higher
It
standard.
was just like Buckeye Lake, they had to rebuild that. The state said, you had
Yes.
to do
Right.
this, and they had to pay for it.
I'm just looking at it as why they can come in and breach it
Yeah.
with no.
Most of the times when they breach those are class 2 and class 3 dams that don't have the potential that the class 1 does. Now, reservoir 2 is classified as class 2, but there's a number of issues associated with it that it's actually on the border between class 1 and class 2. They gave us the benefit of the doubt and called it a class 2. One of the things that we had looked at with the city personnel that's familiar with Reservoir 2 is to locate what is called the lake drain system.
Let's see.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we haven't been able to find it yet. But if we can find it, that's the easiest way to drain a reservoir.
Right.
You just open it up a little bit, and you increase the flow to where maybe it's the equivalent of a 10-year storm event in the area. You just let it drain until it's done. And if it takes 1 year, it takes 1 year. ODNR does not have a problem with slow draining a reservoir.
That's it. Thank you.
So if we slow drain a reservoir and it becomes empty, it's no longer a reservoir and we're no longer required to do anything with it, or?
Well, the only thing we're required to do two things then. We're required to remove the embankment and the spillway, so it can never be used as a dam again. And of course, it's a lake bottom. You know what kind of problems we'd have with just a smelly, stinky lake bottom? So yes, we would have to do something along those lines. Convert it to grasslands. I mean, you could actually put in a series of small ponds for a wildlife refuge. Yes. Now, one of the other items that I failed to talk about was Jeff McMullen is also looking into alternative funding for this work. And one of the ones that he was looking at, we actually had Ohio EPA, because they manage this one particular fund, to come out and look at Reservoir 2 to possibly fund, once we basically breach it, to help us pay for cleaning it up, making it into a wildlife refuge. But he is still looking at a number of other funding mechanisms.
Question.
Marion,
Yes.
if I can summarize, our two least expensive options are to sell and then to breach. One of those two options
For Reservoir 2?
is worth two.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. To bring Reservoir 2 into compliance is very pricey.
No.
My question is about 2, is if we breach it and drain it,
Yes.
don't we then, because of there's so much that actually flows into that comes from clear outside of the city.
Yes.
And do we have to redo what was the original route of the creek that took it up to?
We won't have to do the
Sandusky?
original route, but we will have to
Have to do
create
a route.
a route.
Okay, so
Yes.
that would have to be created all the way to the Sandusky.
Yes.
Okay. We just don't let it find its own way.
No.
No.
Would be nice, but no.
Okay, you beat this horse?
Not yet, not nearly enough.
Wait to see the report.
Okay, all right.
Thanks, Marion.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, end of the Public Lands and Buildings Committee will recess, is that right?
7:30.
At 7:39.
Keep going.
And we'll go right into Finance Committee. Pick that up at 7:39. Call that to order. Marion Road, Beal Avenue traffic signal. That's a different one, isn't it?
No, that's what
That's
we
the same one.
already
Oh,
discussed.
it's just been so long. that-
2 hours
We
ago.
just need permission from Finance Committee to okay the request from Platting.
All right. Do we,
Are we putting a limit of up to 150,000 in that, or no? Or just approving?
It was,
You said to add
150 plus
10%.
10.
Yeah.
150 plus 10%? Yeah.
So-
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Did you
Okay.
get it?
Now we're going to do the ODOT paving on North Sandusky Avenue, same.
I'll make a motion to approve that as is.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye also. And city reservoirs, I guess,
Nothing. This one.
we know it's going to cost a lot, that's why I think finance. Concrete pile, we need to, that's the one we need to put out for bid, right? So, do I have a motion?
Are we setting a 100,000 limit on that, or is it just going
Well,
out?
we budgeted 100,000,
So
so.
we'll have to,
I thought we were just going to bid at that
we're
point.
gonna go to bid and
See what we get.
see what we
Yeah,
get.
so do we, does finance need to do anything with it until we get a number back?
We have
We
to
have
have it
to-
to go to bid.
Okay.
We have to approve it.
Yeah.
Approval to go to bid? I'll make a motion to approve going to bid.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this is our Uh-oh, Arrowhead Drive. That's,
Where did they go?
They thought they were done.
Yep.
Bruce's stuff.
Bruce is coming back.
Bruce, we need Bruce.
Arrowhead Drive is going to
Tell
cost
Bruce
us
he's got to start talking to Barry.
$3,000.
I'll call Bruce.
Arrowhead Drive, Bruce.
Bruce, we need you to pave our subdivision.
Trying to. Arrowhead is funded, I lost my cheat sheet. Arrowhead is funded partially with OPWC money and partially with the city money. It is about 230,000, I think, of street money, and OPWC is 185,000. Thank you. Here again, this has been budgeted since the beginning of the year. We just haven't come to you for permission, authority, whatever the proper word is, to go to bid.
Does it make a difference that it says 185 on one of our resolution pages and 184 on the other? They're just
You know,
$1,000 off there, and not that matters, but we'll just,
Which page? Oh, those were, this was the,
I pay around it off to
Yeah.
85, yeah,
Okay.
I tend to do that.
that's what we used for budget, right?
Yeah, that's just budget.
that's just the budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can make it whatever
The
the
resolution.
So we're right at it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to do the resurfacing project Arrowhead Drive.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
this
Okay.
is to go out to bid.
Go out to bid and all that.
Exactly what he meant. Friendship Trail, the bike path.
Here again, that item's been budgeted, partially from ODNR, the grant we submitted a little over a year ago, and then the balance for city money.
If you flip the page back, Bruce, it's got it listed on that one.
Thank you. I had the city, ODNR share is 57,000.
19 is ours.
I'm sorry.
You?
Yeah, the ODNR is 57,000, the city is 19 for construction. So, yeah, that's made it 76,000. They're definitely like permission to go to bid.
You get a motion?
Just quickly point out that ODNR has a little money laying around here for 57,000, we just got done talking about.
And actually, it's federal money that comes through there.
All right, well,
It's-
either way.
Yeah, you're right.
All right, so I'll make a motion to proceed going out to bid on the Pritchard's track.
So at least you're clear.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Didn't they come in less than what it was originally? Right there?
I don't want to stir up more discussion.
Well, I think we budgeted 22,000.
Right.
Some reason. Whetstone East Mansfield Sewer Project.
All right, let me,
That was in 2 budgets ago, I think.
well,
wasn't it?
let's, yeah, we'll walk through that. We originally had a budget of 200,000, and that was to install pipe. It didn't include the concrete channel down to the river, which we've included. And it didn't include, the city did smoke testing, as part of our CSO removal. We found 2 catch basins up on Lane and Penn, I think, up in that neighborhood. Is there some that are tied directly into sanitary? So we made the pipe to be able to handle, any additional flow. We stubbed it out with a 24-inch. So when we submitted an estimate to OEPA, we didn't talk OEPA into letting you fund this with the 0% CSO rate. The initial, that's at that 4.1 million. That was originally, group 1 and 2 and 3, but we convinced them it's in the same neighborhood, they're accomplishing the same things. When we found that catch basins tied in, that'll help us separate sewers. So they said, yeah, we could budget that. So we submitted 356 in the application. Well, the bids with a little bit lower alternate is at 278. We had gone ahead and did this, and that's when we realized we should have been and come to see you all. That's why we're here together. So, that's kind of a condensed version of the history of that project and why the cost seems like it's bouncing around.
So we need to bid this, is that?
No, it's right. Yeah, bid was 278.
Right, that's what I thought you said. Okay.
So the money's already part of that, the money's already part.
Yeah,
Oh,
and we
yeah.
had the budget set up for the 350,
Okay,
356.
so it's under budget,
Correct.
okay. So there's nothing we have to do tonight,
That's what, I guess.
Mr. Law Director?
Not that I'm aware.
Yeah, we basically went out to bid without talking to you all first. I mean, you knew about the project, but
Yeah. But I mean, we'd approved the project. Yes, we discussed it.
And we're 78,000 on the budget, so that's a good thing. Be happy about that.
Oh, I think he's just here,
So we,
right?
yeah, you'll need legislation too.
She needs legislation.
I need legislation because we're saying it was budgeted for 200,000 in this resolution.
that was a long time ago, Eddie.
Yeah, that was 2 years ago.
2018.
Yeah, February of 2018.
Okay.
And we haven't amended that amount until now. We need to do that.
So we need
Amendment to
legislation.
that resolution, changing the 200,000 to 278,924. That's a motion.
That's a motion.
What if there's a change order?
Oh. Well,
Dr.
No,
Seeds.
because
I don't know.
well, if it went to bid, then we already are, that's our bid.
Well, if we encounter something underground and we don't know it's there.
But she has to have it in order.
But I have to have it in order
Spend
to
the money
pay.
and get the money.
Yeah.
She needs legislation amending 210-2018 with the new number, which the new number should be
The 356, shouldn't
Yes.
it?
356 plus 10%.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Employee manpower, still in finance here. Recreation department, it looks like lawn maintenance. Who's gonna talk about this one? I have no idea.
Okay, part of what we're doing here, Franny,
Go ahead.
part of what we're doing here is the last time that we updated the employee manpower, the wrong, which would have been 13-20, is that 13-2018? The wrong, the latest piece was grabbed, which means changes that had been made since then were not included in the one that we just did. So we have to put back the old changes too, because we had made different, number of lifeguards and substitute lifeguards, and those things have to be put back into it. That's part of it.
Actually, 13/2018, which you have in your packet, that is when we did the, I think this was about this time last year, a little sooner. That's when we changed the lifeguard numbers, and you'll see in 13/2018, those lifeguard numbers are correct, and you've got concession workers in there too. Since that occurrence, when we did 2019, earlier this year, there was a version pulled prior to 13/2018. So the new lifeguard numbers are not in 2019, so we need to go back and basically go back in time and have the new ordinance reflect the lifeguard numbers in 13/2018.
Basically just to correct and clarify.
Yes, right. And then secondly, there's the lawn maintenance issue, which you
I'm speaking to.
well, someone in the administration should,
I can speak.
okay, very good.
We have a person who worked several years on the boom
On the
mower.
back page.
On a boom mower, and basically took a year off last year, and he's very good. He maintains all the equipment that is a very technical piece of equipment to use and a very expensive piece of equipment to use. It's not, very few people can do it well. He does it very well. Well, he applied for the job this year. Technically, by the ordinance, that we have to start him out at the starting wage. We'd like to be able to pay him the wage that he would have had with his experience level. We're asking for your permission to do that.
That's the one
Is
item.
that the
J.
guy you had last year?
No, we have to.
Good.
The other guy.
So basically, what you want to do is move the max to $12.
Right, exactly. Want to move it back.
From 10 to 12.
So 10 to 12.
And then, if I can add one thing, I mean, we're doing okay this year, filling our spots, but just keep in mind that the wages are, under some pressure and are going up some in that entry level. So maybe as another time in the future, we may have to address, looking at the starting wage too. We don't have to right now, though.
Well, for half an hour do they work on the boom mower?
I think it's full time, 40 hours, right?
Yeah,
I think it's 40, yeah.
What is those?
he is seasonal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's seasonal help,
Yes, Bruce?
Why don't you give him more leeway on the max pay? I mean, it doesn't mean he's gonna spend $15, but
And actually, Mr. Wagner and I had talked about this today. We had another meeting, and he actually mentioned that he was maybe going to come back to you to ask for a range like 10 to 1350, so that he has some leeway in recruiting or he had replaced. Because it's a $75,000 piece of equipment apparently. So, yeah, to that point, he and I are just talking about that very much, or not much, but post-lunch meeting.
Yeah, and to operate a piece of equipment like that takes some skill. And there's not too many people that would do that for, $13 an hour, $12 an hour. So, yeah,
Well,
if we could have a range, that would be great.
I just wondered why we never hired someone with that skill, and then, they could do something else during the winter, but and then we would always have them every year, it sounds like the gentleman you're talking about just likes to work just the summers, but.
Yes, it
But
does.
I don't know why we never looked into, let's hire someone, let's pay them the wages, the next year, they get the raise like everybody else, and maybe they're washing garbage trucks, I don't know what's left to do during the winter,
Mr. Chairman, it's just a budget issue,
Yeah.
It adds about, by the time you pay the benefits and, sick time and personal time, and, you're adding, you're doubling the cost. And so we just try to save money and keep, because, we have to, the funds some of the funds are kind of under stress, we just have to raise it. So as long as we have somebody that is willing to do it part-time and that your concern is good, we might have to address that some year. But right now, I don't think we do.
Okay, yeah, Bruce, go for it.
I would like to make a suggestion that maybe one of the people on Finance Committee make a motion to give a range and maybe increase the range. Doesn't necessarily mean he's gonna spend it, but at least it doesn't tie his hands that he has to come back every year to ask us for another dollar.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that, if someone would make that motion.
I'd like to ask a question.
Okay, yeah.
What kind of a range would satisfy the state?
Mr. Wagner, today when we talked about the number he mentioned was 1350. So if you would go a little bit above that or right at that.
I like the idea that Mr. Truca has, is it not have to come back and do it again and again. So I think I'd like, unless there's any opposition, on motion for $15 as the max range.
That was my thought. Not on that committee, but that was my thought.
I have that motion, I have that motion on the floor, do I have a second?
Okay, so we're just talking about the lawn maintenance position.
6 months a year.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Wow, is that the end? All right.
Wait till you read it all next time.
Yeah. So, yeah, I get to read it all. That's become sick, okay? So with that, we'll recess at 7:56.
All right. Health and safety. Call to order 7:56. Item number 1 is codified ordinance 311.01, which is street obstructions. There's been a lot of talk recently about grass clippings in the roadway, and it's been a topic that several of us on council have received multiple phone calls, and the police department has received multiple phone calls. And in conversation, it was brought up that we wanted to ask Mr. Ratliff to maybe amend a little bit of that ordinance to include the grass clippings. So, you may, sir. I was asked to let you know if you have no interest in any of the rest of this, you're more than welcome to leave. We don't want to make you feel like you have to stay. And we should have said that to you about 2.5 hours ago. But thanks for being here. And
Well, thanks for the opportunity.
yeah, come back anytime.
Okay.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you, sir.
I saw some stress on their faces.
At any point, Mr. Ratliff, I think where we're going with this is to come to you for some guidance on maybe amending that ordinance to include that, and thinking of that if there's a finable offense that it might deter people. So I know every year, the mayor puts out a plea, it's put in our bills, talking about leaves, talking about grass clippings and things, and it seems like every year it's the same message, and yet we see nobody complying with that request. So I think we're at this point.
Yeah. The first thing is that these penalties, what we do have for putting things into the street, rather minimal. I mean, you could, you can put some pretty obnoxious things out in the middle of the street and call it wreak havoc, and it's a minor misdemeanor. It's a maximum fine of $150. I don't have with me, and I think Mr. Fuller, one of you guys had sent me a link to Galleon's ordinance. Yeah, and it basically, it just included, it kind of had a list of things like we did, but it also included grass and organic materials. His language was just, that was all.
I showed that to you, that's what it was.
Yeah, and so, I mean, that's fine, it's easy enough to do, you can just amend this section.
Mr. Truca, has there ever been in this past, has there ever been any written warnings given to anybody? I mean, it seems like all it takes is a couple of warnings and then everybody sets up and takes notice.
Well, Ohio Revised Code has something, but we can't really, in my understanding that correctly, we don't really enforce that.
We can enforce it, our officers can enforce the ORC sections.
Okay.
And they do, routinely. But that's not one that they've really enforced in the past. We wouldn't give any written warnings under the city code section because it doesn't really, it's not prohibited under our city code. Blowing grass in the street under our city code is okay. It's just something that we discourage. So, you know, that's kind of where that lays out. The ORC section is, I forget what it is, but it's a little, yeah,
4511.7 something, I believe.
it's very broad and it's very vague. It's, you know, much like we had noise ordinance issues today. It's a little difficult to enforce for what we're talking about here and creating, you know, wreaking havoc by piling up grass in the street.
Is there any way that, like at the beginning of the season, a reminder to especially the businesses that are cutting grass all over town, that we send a reminder to them? I'll tell you, I know the best way to get somebody to take care of it is you get out of your car, you take your phone out, you start taking pictures, and when they come out and ask you what you're doing, you're telling them, I'm going to turn this into the city, and you're gonna be fined for doing this.
Well, you wouldn't.
And they clean, I know that.
I think unfortunately,
Yeah.
someone know that.
But they cleaned it up.
Yeah.
I mean, because it was all over East and Oakwood, at one of those intersections, and it was a mess. And you know, sometimes you just have to maybe remind them that, can we do something with that? We've got a list we can get a list pretty well of who does it in town.
I nominate Sislav to do that.
I'll do it, okay.
And I will say.
You know who I passed
give me
that
one
off
second.
to?
I will say that as a motorcyclist, and Mr. Foat is as well,
I'll adjust them.
grass is, technically the chemical composition of grass is about 80% liquid. And so it does act as ice, and not just motorcycles, but smaller cars as well. So there's a safety concern as well. Also, it's unsightly, and it can potentially lead to some problems getting into the drain
Sure.
basins.
Yeah.
The blocks are the catch basins.
Yes, and then leads to flooding. So, Kim?
Okay, it's also dangerous to small kids on bicycles. It's like,
Yeah.
stupid. I just wrote about this, and Galleon's police chief, they do enforce it there. They have their ordinance. And it seems like, because I do the Galleon police report every day, like I do the Bucyrus, and it looks like they do stop and knock on doors. Like if they see the grass in the road and they're out patrolling and they have a free moment, they will knock on your door and give you a warning. And then if they catch it again, they cite it. And that's what Brian said. They give warnings usually first, and then.
Would that be something we would be looking at our police department to enforce or our code enforcement?
I think combination.
It would probably be something that the police department would be enforcing more than anything. Code enforcement could respond to it on a complaint as needed basis. As, you know, the police are gonna be more in a position to respond to it if, you know, if a neighbor is calling it in and saying, hey, he's, you know, doing, because they're gonna be more 24/7.
Okay, could you bring us back then a sample of what changes you'd make to this?
I would just include in the things that place or knowingly drop, tax bottles, bars, glass nails, grass, or other organic materials, and just specify that those things are included in there, and I think that's all you have to do.
Mr. Sticker?
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, are we talking about grass clippings that are dumped in the street in piles or blown into the street from the lawnmowers?
Both.
Both. Because in the past couple of years, I've heard Mayor Reeser comment to the public about blowing their grass clippings into the street, asking them not to do it, and have witnessed our city crews mowing and blowing the clippings into the street, and have brought that to the attention of Mayor Reeser and Jeff Wagner both. So how are we going to enforce this for the residents if we can't get the city crews to follow? Personally, I try to keep my grass clippings out of the street and blow them off the street when I possibly can with my blower. But in a lot of cases, it's very difficult, mowing property on a very busy street, even using a mower that is a mulching mower that typically doesn't really blow the grass out. I still get grass clippings along the edge of the street. You know, it's very difficult to keep that from happening.
Mr. Chairman.
Sir.
Mr. Stuckey, yeah, we've addressed it with the city workers. They know not to do that, and you bring up a good point. You know, for your first strip right by the curb, you're gonna get some grass in the street. I don't think, you know, we're really talking about that so much as a person aimed and blowing it out the street and not making an effort to blow it back in towards the yard. You know, the city is not gonna, you're not gonna be, you know, coming by it. Yeah, it's just,
But to Mr. Strickler's point, I did take a phone call this week, and it was witnessed on Irving Street at the ODOT facility this week that our crews were blowing it into the street. So maybe we'll ask you to have Mr. Wagner address that with them again.
I just drove by that, yeah, I didn't see anything yesterday, I drove by yesterday.
I got a call while it was going on from a female lives across the street from there.
What's going to be the point of
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna find a way to
determination
quantify
if it's residents' fault doing this deliberately or
Right,
not?
I agree
You know,
with
how
that.
much grass into the street is going to be
How many places
considered
square inch?
deliberate and whatnot?
Mr. Shaw?
We've covered it.
I cleaned my catch basin off before I walked into this meeting this afternoon, because if not, my street was gonna be flooded because there were grass being blown out in the gutter. Oh, okay, I'll stop then. I had one.
Oh, go on.
No.
Go ahead.
I'm good.
Is this also gonna include alleys? It should, because it is a paved road, and you said motorcycles and,
Yeah, it does. Our ordinance currently includes alleys, street, highway, alley.
yeah, because I've seen it, and I have a neighbor who rides a motorcycle, and, yeah.
That was how I was involved in my first ever accident in my entire life, because somebody blew the grass clippings off the road and I slid on them.
I just wanna make sure we're gonna include the alleys.
Our ordinance as it stands includes alleys.
Mr. Fankhauser?
While we're talking about rubbish and stuff in the streets, I witnessed on several streets here in the last month that it appears the street sweeper has not run down some of these streets since last fall, because there's stuff like leaves, pine needles, and things like that, they're piling up. And I have had some people point out to me and say that it appears that the street sweeper hasn't been being run as much as it has in previous years. And I noticed on the street levy renewal paperwork, or literature, it said that street sweeper is paid, that's one of the things that levy can pay for. So since the citizens just voted to renew the levy, you know, I think if the street sweeper's not being run as much.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Last year, you're right, you're 100% right. We were shorthanded, and that was one of the things that we didn't get to as much, which I didn't care for either, because, you know, you need to sweep the streets to keep the weeds from going to the cracks. This year, they've been out a lot more already. If any of the residents see a street, and I noticed them too, if any of the residents see a street that hasn't been swept in a while, please call us and let us know.
Is
We'll
it my
pass it on.
understanding that only certain employees that are trained specifically can
Right.
be certified to do that?
Yeah.
So
Well, they're trained, they're certified,
Okay.
just trained to do it, yeah. And so we have two folks, two guys do that, so. Yeah, but like I say, if they need it, just call us, we'll make sure it gets there.
On the grass clipping issue, I was just gonna say that, you know, to Rob's point earlier, you know, just the reasonable person standard of how much grass clippings is too much and how far into the street can they be, it's gonna be difficult to enforce and have it stand up. And so until we have some, you know, proposed language,
Yeah.
I think we can move on until Rob gets us, language, if we want to see the language on
Great idea.
something.
Derelict properties. I had met with Mr. Ratliff to do a little more research, and you know, I understand that there's a lot of concern from some of the property owners, and specifically the landlords that have come in and spoke with us. And I brought up a specific residence, and then we went and looked at it, and after having a conversation with Mr. Ratliff about this particular residence, you know, so the gentleman that lives next door calls and says, hey, you know, I've got a property next to me, it's got, windows are broken in, there's holes in the roof that people just up and moved out. And I was blown away with what information I learned, and I'll let you take over kind of the conversation here and just kind of explain.
Well, and that's a property, it's over here, or that way, I suppose. It was owned, family passed away. A grandson was living in it for a while. There's no owner. The heirs, city state, one lives in Germany. They don't really want anything to do with it. So there's nobody to convict. There's nobody to force to do anything. There's no real owner. It's condemned. It's been condemned. We can tear it down ourselves, but you know we have limited budget for that. This year we've got 4 parcels picked out, and when the bids come in, we'll know how many of those 4 we can do. And as bad as that house is, it's not the worst. And so it's been there. It's been there for 2 or 3 years now. We're trying to track down the owners. Dealt with the kid that was living there, and you know there's not a whole lot we can do. Another one came to our attention this week as well, because we just got a letter from the county auditor, and this is something Mr. Trooper brought up last time about our assessing on the mowing. And this is a property over on Maple Street. It just went to tax foreclosure sale and nobody bought it. The total back owed taxes are $10,361. Of that, part of that would come to the city, our share of the property tax. So, but just our assessments on the property for mowing is $4,312. We're not going to get a dime of that. And the letter from the county was essentially that nobody bought it, so if we want it, we can have it, which I'll refer to the next council meeting if you want it. So not only do we not get our money, we get the extra added burden of, if we want, taking ownership of a piece of property that we're going to have to mow and figure out what to do with the trailer with the city money. So those are a couple of issues. Now, a vacant building ordinance does not solve either one of those issues, because those houses continue to exist and they continue to exist in vacant status. But from my perspective, what a vacant building ordinance does is it shifts that burden. Those properties are going to be subject to fees. Those fees are going to be assessed and may never be collected. But for the ones that can be collected, the ones that absentee owners, banks, those sorts of things, that allows the city to essentially have a tax on those vacant properties. So this house on Cullen, this house on Maple, we would have then a pool of money that's not coming out of the general fund, that's not being paid for by the people making $10 an hour trying to feed a family, and we're taking their 2% to fix these problems that they didn't create. So that's the reward, if you will, on a vacant building license. Make the banks, make the absentee owners incur those costs and contribute to that burden that's placed upon the city. Because right now we've got 2 neighborhoods that are suffering. The one on Cullen, it's a very nice neighborhood.
And to add to your point, I did ask the question. I said, well, if we do try to prosecute, and you know, how long is this guy who's living next door have to deal with this? And the answer I was given was probably about 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing we can do about it. And so, one of the things, I know we've talked about this several times, and you know, when we read through proposed ordinances and things, it's words on a paper, and I suggested to Mr. Ratliff that he, you know, put together a package for us to look at some actual real-life scenarios of some of these houses and how it's actually affecting the city, how it's affecting the people that live in those neighborhoods, and I think that's something you're working on now, and we'll be able to look at here soon.
We'll work on that, and I think the two biggest ones that should be fresh in everybody's mind are the Clark Station. I mean, that's sat there for decades. You know, and the Strout properties. The Strout properties were at least 12, 15 years of the city fighting. And, you know, I think you can calculate what the yeah, well, yeah. And, you know, calculating the man hours involved in just the fighting and the impact on that community. You know, another perfect example, Mr. Stucker's neighborhood. We have an apartment building that, I don't know how much was invested in, but it looks like it was a fair amount. And it's currently for sale, and it's right next door to one that we've been fighting at least 3 years.
Yep.
And I don't see a resolution in the near future, and it's not even scheduled to go back to court for another 6 or 7 weeks, I think. So I don't see anything happening there. And this one on Maple Drive, I don't know how long it's been in the situation it's been in, but to give you some idea, there's roughly $5,600 in back due property taxes that were finally foreclosed upon. The property taxes are only $129.17 and a half. So it's a lot of years for $129.17 and a half to add up to $5,000. So, you know, those are some of the issues. And like you said, I'll work on putting together a PowerPoint. I haven't done PowerPoint in a while. I know how much Bruce loves this.
I gotta ask something. Why does the county set on them so long?
It's a manpower issue. You know, they're understaffed and they're really fighting battle, especially this year. I don't know if you've seen, I'm probably more privy to it, I guess, that their indictment numbers are through the roof this year. And they've got a total of 4 prosecutors, but only one who does these foreclosures and is also the juvenile prosecutor. So it's a manpower issue, funding issue on their side. It's not a, you know, it's not a profit-making kind of thing. It's not something where the city or the county, you know, generates revenue. You see, I mean, these things, when they don't sell, they become problems. And the other side of it is when this doesn't sell, we can claim it. In the past, I've always recommended that we claim it. And the reason I recommend that is because if they don't sell, they go to, I guess you'd call it a second chance auction. And the county doesn't do them very often, but they do them every year or two. The last one I went to, there were about 20 properties, and they were selling for $1, $2. And within a month or two after that, they were renting them out. And it's not, I don't like seeing it. I mean, I can show you pictures of the conditions of places that some kids live in and turn your stomach, but that's another battle, another day. But, you know, the vacant building ordinance, these are the kind of things that it's trying to protect against. And give them some budget to attack these things.
So that's a pretty good segue into what I was saying. You're talking about those dollar houses. That's kind of why I brought this up is, and I asked this question before, and I don't know if I got an answer about us as the city. So they buy this dollar house and they move in, and it's still a wreck. But we send someone out to turn the water on, and they continue to live there. Why should we be allowed to why can we turn the water on?
It's a good question.
Why should we?
Well, no, it's a valid question. Within the city of Bucyrus, we do not have what's commonly called a certificate of occupancy. Certificate of occupancy does not mean that only so many people can live in your house. A certificate of occupancy means this residence, this building, it meets certain minimum standards or certain minimum codes and is livable. The state of Ohio does not really regulate 1, 2, and 3 family dwellings. Those kind of fall into a category, and in Ohio doesn't really regulate that. We do not have a building officer. We contract everything out to Richland County, so we don't really have even the wherewithal to do that. But certificates of occupancy apply across the board. Rental property registrations apply to a class of properties. And those things would set certain minimum standards. So we would say, hey, look, if you're gonna have a house in the city of Bucyrus, you gotta have a toilet that works. You gotta have running water. You gotta have a roof. Basic standards.
Stuff can't be falling off the property.
Yeah, so we don't have that. We don't have any of those codes, and so that allows, right now, I know there are people living in a house that was a two-family. It was converted to a one-family because it was sat vacant for so long, it lost its grandfather clause. The downstairs is gutted, and the upstairs is habitable. And so they're living in there. When we removed it from the condemnation because they'd done enough to, get it into a one-family, so now it was basically double the square footage, the rent was raised because now they have twice the square footage, even though the downstairs is completely gutted.
So to further my question, I am looking at properties on, and I hate to point fingers, but the railroad tracks on Beal Avenue, those two are for sale now.
Yeah.
So, someone's gonna move in there, and that's the perfect time to say, well, let's check this out. So the guy goes to turn the water on. When the gas company comes to turn the water, or the gas on a new home, or, when you move in, they make sure there's no leaks or anything, they walk out.
Yeah,
Why can't we do that? And, he's going out there anyhow, just go in, make sure the meter's in there, and, but anymore, we just turn it and go.
A couple of reasons. One, we necessarily don't have probable cause to enter the property. If our water person only needs to turn it on from the street, they don't necessarily go in. We do have a prescription within the International Property Maintenance Code that says you can't sell a property that's been condemned, but
It happens.
and we don't necessarily know when a property's sold.
Right.
I know there's a difference of opinion on that, but nobody tells the city when a property's sold. We don't get notified from the county or the recorder's office or anything like that. We have a lot of properties that sell land contract, just shaking of hands between two people. So we're not involved in that transaction a lot of times. And we see a lot of houses that'll sell, and the water doesn't really change because, they've been the old name or whatever. So there's a lot of loopholes. And so right now, the system we have in place is we respond to complaints, and we pursue those complaints, and those take however long they take. The process right now is Gordon will inspect the property. He'll try to work with the property owner for a while until he gets no input. It'll get referred to me for prosecution, or it'll go to the board, and the board will generally work with them, trying to get it back up to some sort of semblance. And what we always run into with any of those is how good is good enough. I can't require a house to meet what I think is a habitable standard, but because we don't set that. We only say, we have our property maintenance code. Our property maintenance code says the roof shouldn't have any holes. So if there's 15 different kinds of shingles and tarps and tapes and, whatever, that could be good enough. I, most of us wouldn't do it, but, I looked at one last week, and, one of the issues was broken out windows on the second floor. Well, they fixed them by taking various assorted scrap pieces of aluminum siding and nailed them over the windows. So now the upstairs is a hodgepodge of all these different shapes, styles, and forms of aluminum siding. Actually, I think Mr. Fankhauser was one that sent me a picture of that one, or we ran it in the hallway over by the Krauter.
We talked about it.
Yeah, And just coincidentally, that was in court like the next day or two. He paid a contractor to do that. So, you know, we don't set minimal standards, and that's, we could, but we don't. We don't have certificates of occupancy that say it must meet these standards to be habitable. We could, but we don't.
So I thought that by asking Mr. Ratliff to put together, you know, a presentation to us of some actual properties, you know, with some issues that they have, would give us a better understanding, and we get the public that's concerned that, you know, where are we going with this, to show some examples, and so I know he's working on that side of things, and we'll revisit that, Mr. McCutcheon.
The vacant building fee, I'm assuming if you start sending that to somebody and they don't pay it, you're gonna try assessing it on their property tax. Is that?
Multiple things you can do. Yeah, you can assess it on property tax. You can criminalize it, which I don't necessarily recommend. You know, or you can put it out to like collections.
So if it's on a property that somebody hasn't been paying property tax, they haven't been paying their taxes, and it gets in this situation where it builds up, and then we ultimately get nothing out of it because it goes for sale for $1, how does it even help us to have it?
It helps us on the ones that actually do pay it. Because
So those ones are kind of subsidizing, the ones that are paying are kind of subsidizing the ones that ain't paying.
the ones that do pay give us the tools. Yeah, the ones that do pay give us the tools to be able to take action against the ones that don't. Because right now, we have a very limited budget. Land Bank's not getting their grant money anymore, so we have very limited budget on what we can tear down. We have, I think my budget is $30,000 I get every year, and it's $8,000 to $10,000 to tear down a house. So we've got 4 picked out this year. We just got the numbers back on the asbestos inspections because the city, we got to do those. $2,500 just to do the asbestos inspections. If those all come back negative, then we can put them out to bid, and we'll try to get as much done with that remaining funds as possible. But when the banks and whoever are paying that on those vacant building licenses, that's funding that the city can use, set aside. It's not general fund money. It's not money that taxpayers are paying. It's not coming out of their paychecks.
So will we have a new line, a new?
Yeah, you'd have to create a new line item in the budget and everything. It's gotten so prevalent now. We have solicitations every once in a while from companies that actually just manage these programs for towns. You know, because they can collect and it's not a bad way to go because they're a little bit more aggressive in going after the out-of-state banks and the big national banks that do it. We get calls frequently from the big national banks that know that these are coming, and they just say, "What is your ordinance? How much do I have to pay you?" So it's the big banks know. It's the odds and ends ones like this one. I mean, this old lady was probably in a nursing home for a period of time, and the property went down, and so you get those. But the issue is now we've got this property with a trailer on it, and somebody's got to do something from this point forward. It's got to be cleared, it's got to be demoed, and somebody's got to pay for that. And my opinion is, people that have these vacant buildings, these abandoned buildings, should be paying for it, not the family that's both parents working 70 hours to put food on the table. They don't need to be paying for it. People that are responsible for that condition need to be paying for it.
So we'll look forward to having some more literature from you.
I'll invite Mr. Rowe.
All right. If there's no other questions or comments from the committee, we'll close health and safety at 8:28 p.m.
Bruce, you're next.
Okay. Service committee, what time did you?
8:28.
Okay, we'll just go 8:28. Water line expansion.
Yeah, I brought this. There's Stepney Drive. You know about that? We
Yeah.
moving forward with that?
Well, it's gonna, I think it's about 4 miles out there.
I heard it was 1,200 feet according to McKeever.
1,200 feet to Stephanie Drive?
There's a line out there apparently.
You talking about the line coming down
Route 30,
30 and down
Oak Drive.
Oak Drive.
That I don't know about. I'm talking about the Beach Grove.
I don't know, but
Beach Grove.
maybe.
There's
get a hold
1,200
of-
feet, that's, I've never, I haven't heard that.
Well, I heard that from a resident, also a county commissioner, so, I don't know.
Instead of going down the road.
Yeah, apparently there's, studs or something out there, so maybe. you
I can
want
look
to
into
go
it. I thought, I didn't know about that. We were potential of going down Stephanie from Beach
Drive
Grove.
over to.
But that's several miles down there, that's, you know,
Well,
it's gonna be a substantial.
this is what I was told. I don't know.
I can look
Throwing
into
that
it.
in your,
I
I'm throwing that in
Well,
your.
yeah, that kind of makes me wonder, why were we worried about running down Stetzer Road that whole time if there's already a stub out there at Stephanie? Well, that time with Northern Ohio Rural Water, we're worried about running the line down Stetzer and there's already a stub at Stephanie?
But that's not, remember, that's not ours, that's still, we're maintaining the water line, it's still owned by the county.
That's
We
the
don't
county's
own
The process of coming to us anyways.
We have nothing's been done, that's not till August.
Right.
If we, once the administration goes through, we have, it's still not ours.
Right,
I can answer, I'll ask Lynn.
Well, what I'm told is there's
Well,
24 people out there, 24 homes that want it, so.
Yeah.
Well, it's also
Well, we got, the other thing too, where we got.
contingent if it's big enough to service another 24. I mean, it was probably sized
Well,
for
that's,
what it was run to.
well, I'll get an answer for you.
That
Yeah.
surprised me.
Mr. Trucca?
No, but not the one that goes down.
Oh, okay, whatever.
I'm asking you,
Yeah, it could be.
I'll get an
That's
answer,
1,200
I'll
feet.
get some more information by the next committee meeting. But, yeah, we also had a petition on County Road 35. I think 30 people signed that, and we actually signed 5 or 6 up. So, interest versus, you know, taking the
The
step.
real thing, I completely understand.
Yeah, so, it was, and the revenue, you typically with the revenue, even if they pay 1.5 times, it's, you know, it's probably less than it. So if you get 24 people and each spend $1,000, you're still, let's say we spend $500,000, which you get 24,000 a year revenue, is, you know, it's a 20-year payback. But you see what I'm saying? It's very, these are financial decisions that can be difficult, but I mean, we want to be able to invest and sell water, but we certainly have to do it. Now, some of it obviously is a tap-in fee, you know, that offsets some of it too, so. But I'll have more information for you, I promise.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why they haven't come to you before, but I would think they would.
We've had a couple, you know.
Well, I mean, if
And we
that's
said, we
the
told them
case,
we're
then
interested.
why someone,
Yeah.
Okay.
Right
Anything
now,
else?
good, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, right now, we were concentrating on County Road 35, getting it in first.
Waterfall?
I'm done.
You're done. Anybody else? Okay. Tell me a time.
8:32.
I recess at 8:32.
I'll call economic development at 8:32. You're up again, Dan.
Well, in the same conversation I had, the county owns the property just east of our family farm and home, and they were entertaining a buyer for that property, I guess, but that is outside the city limits. And so,
Just east of where now?
Very far away.
Okay, okay.
so I guess I just say we need to,
We go up to.
well, the sheriff's
That's
department is.
Overland, we go to.
Yeah, it's a hodgepodge out there,
Yeah.
and we've looked at it. The two banks on the triangle there, both would like to annex. The problem we have is if we annex them, we kind of create an island around Overlanders. There's a couple of businesses and residences that are to the west of that, that basically told us to, no. Across the street, there's one retail establishment, again, they've told us no. But they do receive city utilities. It's just a hodgepodge out there. It'd be very beneficial to annex a lot of that, but it's a hodgepodge. The owner of Family Farm and Home, I've talked to him a number of times, he would love to annex, but his question was, can you help me on the property tax? He got killed on this last property tax assessment, because it was an abandoned Kmart, and he put all that money into it, and then when they just did the assessments this last time, he got really whacked.
That's an indication.
Yeah, so he was looking whether or not if there was anything we could do for him there. I don't know if there's much, but we could meet with Gary Frankhouse and see. But there's a lot out there. There's a lot out there for sale. I think that's a high development area. There's some things showing interest out there. There's some places that we've been in touch with. So it'd be great to have a development plan for out
I
there.
think the family farm fleet was adjacent to or was connected to the sheriff.
It is. They could easily annex. They're just looking for some incentives to do so. It's such a hodgepodge. It's one of those things that if from an economic development standpoint, if you're interested in doing it, it may be worth your while to bring in a specialist on that and talking about a larger area, cleaning that up, making it a nice, boundary. There's a lot of residences, there's a lot of businesses. Some may be beneficial too, some may not. And, some we have to take a look at. But we have talked about that. I do know the banks are very interested, both of them, in wanting to come in. But, it creates that island situation. It'd be very beneficial for us to annex those two banks.
If you annex a residence, then you're looking at, losing them 1.5 times the water rates. You have to factor that into,
As our water rates go up, it becomes more beneficial to annex.
To give and take.
For them,
That's all I had. Just wanted to,
Yeah, it's something we've talked about.
if that property is going to be a business and they'll want water, and how are we going to do that? I'm sure they're going to want sewer too, so. Okay.
Well, I was gonna ask one of the committee people, why don't you guys pursue somebody and find out what you can do to find some incentives and some money maybe that Mr. Frankhouse?
Yeah.
Maybe he could find
I think
an
what's really,
incentive package or something for.
Are we not doing that on our?
well, that's the thing, we can offer municipal tax credits and things like that once they're inside the city limits, but it's just the biggest problem that we run into right now is there's the one business that is killing the whole mess. Because they have told us, if you try and annex us in, we'll pull shop and move. And that's X amount of jobs that we would lose and people's livelihoods.
They're out of the city, if they live in the city, we're not loose.
We know what this place is, and most of the people live in the city.
Not the owner anymore.
Well, one person out of 40.
Mr. Chairman, Gary's going to be here at the next council meeting.
Yep.
And I can have him address that then.
I'm just talking about the farm store, I ain't talking about anybody else, I just was maybe helping the farm store out to.
No, I agree, that's the idea, but the whole thing is when you do annexation, you don't spot annex. And I understand that the sheriff's department already is, but we're just creating more of this hodgepodge mess if we don't do it all at once. The whole strip.
But even with the
Yeah, what you can
annexation, any of the property taxes, those still take like 10 years or something.
Yeah, it depends on how you do it.
Yeah, it could take up 10, 18 years before we would ever see any of those taxes, because Whetstone Township, that is Whetstone, isn't it?
Yep.
Will continue to get a certain percentage of the money each year, and it just, balances out.
The difference is in the municipal income tax.
Yeah.
That's where we see it.
But
Well,
the council that's sitting here in 18 years would thank us for doing that.
Yes, true,
So,
I agree.
I think it's worth looking at.
Well, if you'd like, I can try to, there's law firms and groups that specializes in larger annexation projects. I could bring some, try to find somebody to come in and talk about maybe cleaning up that whole east end, doing the zone, because there's a process to do it where you put it out to vote, and people vote on it.
So it's a property owner's mechanism too.
Yeah.
Is that it? Anybody got anything else? All right, I'll recess at 8:38.
You want to get shot?
Any public participation?
They're asleep.
I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We're not done.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned at 8:39.
Run for the door.
No,
We're not done. I need a signature from the Keeler and Warren Ball.
pass that,
I
please.
have time to go vote.
You don't really have, you can go right ahead, we're gonna get
There's a
started.
place in here where we asked for
Okay.
a recess.
Just remember where the light's at, I couldn't find it last time.
Okay, everybody ready? Ready to start the next meeting? We can't do until it's signed.
Wireball's been signed.
Wireball's gotta sign
How
it.
much is it
How can
worth
you
to
sign,
you?
you signed that one too? Oh,
Yeah.
all right,
He's
I'm
acting
sorry.
chair.
That's right, 5 minutes.
We just done.
It's done, go ahead, let's start.
Okay. Here we go. Special meeting of Bucyrus City Council for May the 9th, 2019 is called to order at 8:40 p.m. Please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Keeper.
Here.
Myers.
Here.
Wireball.
Here?
Trucca.
Here.
Sack. Vote.
Here.
Shock.
Here.
This is where we grant permission for visitors to speak. Since this is a special meeting, the only item that can be discussed is this ODOT paving of North Sandusky Avenue. Anyone? None? For consideration of proposed legislation for the first time.
We have one piece of legislation, it's a resolution. I'll read down to after the first whereas. The following resolution enacted by the city of Bucyrus of Crawford County, Ohio, hereinafter referred to as the Legislative Authority / Local Public Agency, or LPA, in the matter of the stated described project and declaring an emergency. Whereas on 29th day of January 2019, the LPA enacted legislation proposing cooperation with the Director of Transportation for the described project. The project consists of milling and filling Sandusky Avenue between Perry Street and Quaker Road, including curb ramps and a signal installation at Irving Street lined within the city of Bucyrus. And whereas the LPA shall cooperate with the Director of Transportation in the above described project as follows. The city agrees to assume and bear 100% of the entire cost of the improvement within the city limits, less the amount of federal aid funds set aside by the Director of Transportation for the financing of this improvement from funds allocated by the Federal Highway Administration, U.S. Department of Transportation. The share of the cost of the LPA is now estimated in the amount of $203,657.50, but said estimated amount is to be adjusted in order that the LPA's ultimate share of said improvement shall correspond with said percentages of actual costs when said actual costs are determined. This needs to be referred back to the Platting Committee.
Okay. I need a motion to accept this as the first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Fogue, second by Mr. Myers. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion passed. Need to refer resolution number 213-2019 back to the Platting Committee. This is where we ask for any public participation. Any member of the general public may present their input or comments on legislation that has been read for the first time. Does anyone care to comment? None? Committee reports pending legislation. Platting Committee?
Planning Committee is favorable to Resolution 213-2019 for the ODOT paving of North Sandusky Avenue.
Okay, I need a motion to accept this report.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Fogue, second by Mr. Wireball. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion passed. Thank you. for further consideration of pending legislation. For the second and third reading of proposed ordinance resolution number 213-2019, which is the ODOT paving of North Sandusky Avenue. Do I hear a motion to suspend the rules, waive the reading of the caption and text, and declare it an emergency?
So moved.
Second.
McKeever,
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Wireball,
Yes.
Trucca,
Yes.
Sack, Foote,
Yes.
Shaw.
Yes.
Resolution number 213-2019.
Do I hear a motion to adopt proposed resolution 213-2019?
So moved.
Second.
McKeever,
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Wireball,
Yes.
Trucca,
Yes.
Sack, Foote,
Yes.
Shaw.
Yes.
Resolution number 213-2019, the ODOT paving of North Sandusky Avenue is duly adopted. We need a
So moved.
motion to excuse Ms. Sack from tonight's meeting.
So moved. I knew where she was going
That
with
you
that.
knew where I was going.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Foden, second by Mr. Myers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion passed. I need a motion to
So
adjourn,
moved.
please. Mr. McKeever.
Second.
Second by Mr. Fote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. We are adjourned at 8:45 p.m.
Adjourned on Friday.
It was ingrained in my head, I thought you were gonna ask us for a recess or something.
Dang.